going to start today and take maybe 30 minutes or so and kind of give some background on the Census Bureau geographic programs, so you know what's coming, and then also a little bit about how we store and maintain our data, because sometimes when you're in GUPS, that gives you a little bit of context to understand why we're doing things the way that we do. If I can advance slides. There we go. Okay. Oh, that's what I just said. And then we'll get into the GUPS. We have a lot of geography that we maintain. I'm sure many of you also maintain a lot of geographies in your work. So we find it useful to sort of divide it up into a few different categories. We have three main ones. We have the legal, administrative, and statistical. And they all have their unique characteristics that feed into how we update them. I'm going to go through each of those so you don't have to. But there's some numbers here you can see, like for example, the legal geographies because of county subdivisions, which are, I don't think they're as big here in Montana, but in some states where they have like their townships and towns, we have over 40,000 entities just in the legal category alone. Administrative geography would be where we have these boundaries. They don't really have, they're designed for a very specific function. There's not like elected officials usually, although there might be, and they're designed to do a specific function. So the main ones we have here are the redistricting entities, which is what I work on mostly, congressional districts, state legislative districts, voting precincts, and then the school districts. And we have elementary, secondary, and unified school districts. Those boundaries are decided at the local level. So for our programs related to this, we're basically going to state and local officials and saying, you tell us what they are so that we can put them in our database. And it's really just that kind of exchange. Legal geography they're defined legally in a treaty or an ordinance or a state law or something, and these are the ones most people are familiar with, are states, counties, incorporated places. Usually when I give these presentations, I skip consolidated cities, and then I saw that because there's only about 7 of them in the whole nation, but we have somebody here from our consolidated city. So I was like, I'm going to have to make sure I mention that. And those are just where a city and county sort of merge and combine functions, but maybe there's still an incorporated place out there that's not part of the consolidation. So they're very similar to incorporated places in the way that we treat them, but they are a little bit different. We have minor civil divisions, which I mentioned are more of a thing in some parts of the country than others, and those are your county, the Midwest. They're very popular in the sort of eastern part of the Midwest. And then we have our tribal areas, Alaska Native Regional Corporations in Alaska. We have the reservation areas, off-reservation trust lands. Those are all defined by some kind of a legal documentation. And then we have our Native Hawaiian areas. Tribal subdivisions, some reservations subdivide further, and their tribal governments may subdivide the reservation into some sort of subdivision. It's kind of like if you think of the reservation as the nation, the tribal divisions would be the states. And then we have our areas in Puerto Rico as well. I don't need to spend too much time on that. And then the third category is the statistical geography. They are defined solely for data collection and tabulation and analysis. These are the ones we sort of control in-house. Legal geography, like with the administrative geography, those boundaries are defined in a document. We're just going to state and locals and saying, just tell us what they are and we'll put them in our database. Statistical geography, we still work closely with state and local governments, but we do have like criteria perhaps that they need to apply. For example, like a census tract, we want to keep those as stable as possible from census to census, so we don't let people completely redo their tracts, very rarely. It has happened, but, and we have like population minimum and maximums because we need to make sure that we can actually release data. If people are making a census tract with 2 people in it, we're going to have issues with disclosing people's information if we release data at the tract level. So we put rules and criteria on these, but we will still work with the local and states because ultimately they're the users of the data and it needs to be useful to them. So you see some examples there. We have our lowest level of geography, the tabulation block, census tract, block group, and then there are a number of tribal statistical areas that are available if a tribe is federally or state recognized but does not have a land base, a legal land base. They can delineate an area that maybe represents where their tribal members live and they would like some data for those areas. And the reservations themselves are subdivided into another version of like census tract, census block group hierarchy, which are the tribal census tracts, which nest within the reservation, whereas the other census tracts just nest within counties. And then the one in blue there is census designated place. That's sort of the equivalent, statistical equivalent of an incorporated place. There are, again, this varies widely throughout the country, but some parts of the country just aren't really big on incorporating. But you have these communities that everybody knows, they're well defined, people identify with them, there's just no legal document ever incorporating it, and they usually don't have elected officials. I grew up in a CDP where Cape St. Clair, Maryland is, everybody knows, you say you're from there and identify with it. So we actually draw a boundary with the locals to identify these CDPs. There is one we always throw out because it's kind of interesting. Within the city limit of Las Vegas. It's unincorporated area. So they actually draw a boundary around that so that they can get data for it, although I don't know if that many, I guess people live there. It's actually called Paradise CDP. So next time you're there, you can impress your friends with that tidbit or not. So here's kind of another representation of the geography and how they all relate to each other. And it's important, I show this slide so that people are aware of sort of where we have these nesting relationships. And if we go just down that bar, right down the center there, we have the nation. We subdivide, these aren't very widely used and seen, but we actually subdivide into 4 or 5 regions. And then with those divisions, most people are obviously more familiar with the states, and states nest within nation, counties nest within states, census tracts within counties, block groups within census tracts, and the block is the lowest level of geography. We have the smallest unit. And the key to take away from this slide is that everything goes down to block. So you can, after the decennial census, we do the blocks at the very end. We'll delineate those in 2020 after we have every other geography there pretty much. We have those boundaries set and we lock them down and then we make the blocks. And that way, every boundary for all these other entities is automatically a block boundary. Does that make sense? So, and that, I'm going to point out some examples later where you're going to see why that's kind of important to know. So when you're making sure we have the correct place boundary, you're also making sure we have a good block boundary. And then in addition to all those geographic areas, we also collect addresses, which if you're working in LUCA, you'll get very familiar with. We have a national address list of every housing unit in the U.S., and we try to have most of them we have a map spot for as well, or I should say we strive to have the national address list. We need your help in LUCA to do that. And the national street map, so all the streets, primarily ones where people are going to be living on. Okay. So the bullets here, the first 5 anyway, are our main geographic partnership programs. Kind of talked about these and which geographies that we update in each of them. So I work a lot on the redistricting data program where we're collecting voting districts, and we have completed already collecting block boundary suggestions. So the states can actually flag different linear features in our database and say, we want you to make this a block boundary, even if it's not a boundary for an entity, which would automatically make it a block boundary. Then we have the Boundary and Annexation Survey. That's probably our big one. I think a lot of you are going to be working on that. And that they do all that legal geography that we talked about, the counties, places, minor civil divisions, the tribal reservations, off-reservation trust lands. We have our Participant Statistical Areas Program. I'm not going to talk too much about that today because that doesn't kick in until next year. It will use GUPS, but we don't have the module ready yet, so I can't show you that. But you will see as we go through this GUPS, one of the cool things about GUPS is once you know how to add or remove area from an entity in one kind of entity, you'll know how to do it for all kinds of entities. So if I show you how to add or remove area from an in place today, you'll be able to add and remove area from a block group when the PSAP data come out later next year. We have LUCA, which, as Leslie mentioned, is not my forte, but my colleague Jim will be here later, and he has he's the LUCA guy. So, but LUCA, you can add the linear features and also do your address updates. School District Review Program, I'm also probably not going to show today. Sounds like that's mostly Megan. And Megan, I don't know if you used GUPS last time, but you'll be happy to know it's having an overhaul.
For school districts.
School districts gets that geography can be pretty complicated, and the funding they had was not good. So GUPS is actually getting great reviews, except for the school district model. So we're working on it. We're fixing it. So there was no point in even showing it today. And then the address and road data collection, we have different ways that we work with Postal Service, we work with local governments to collect that. It doesn't use GUPS, except that you can add road data in a lot of these other programs, and of course the LUCA is going to take the addresses. So I have a lot of slides here, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking at you, so I'm going to zip through some of these. I was trying to be prepared to see what people would be interested in. So these are a little more detail about these programs. Sorry. But this was our redistricting program. As I mentioned, we have this block suggestion project, which is already completed. I'm going to skip through that. Currently, we're on the voting district project. The one thing I'll point out with the schedule is this is kind of a schedule that we have for all of our programs where we mail materials out in December. Usually folks have until like the end of May to give us updates. We're processing those through the summer and fall, and then in the December, another set of new shape files comes out that you can check to see if we got all your updates, and the cycle starts over again. So for voting district project, people are submitting their election districts, precincts, and wards. They can also give us missing roads, or if they're misaligned, they're not spatially accurate, they can make corrections. Can update landmarks, area landmarks. That's things like state parks, prisons, cemeteries, that sort of thing. And they can also do updates to legal boundaries, which is really the purview of the BAS, the Boundary and Annexation Survey, but a lot of times voting precincts, remember back to that big hierarchy slide, they have to nest within county. A lot of times they're supposed to nest within an inked place. So when someone like Leslie or any one of you will be helping Leslie is trying to give us accurate precincts, but the place it's supposed to nest within is not an accurate boundary, it can make that job a lot harder. So you can actually give us the place boundary update at the same time. This was just kind of what I just went over about sort of our schedule, and I can provide this PowerPoint if anyone wants to see this. Boundary and Annexation Survey, I think we covered that. It's a voluntary survey. It goes out every year. You can make corrections to what we already have or provide updates. We've had new annexations, de-annexations, and new incorporation. And you can see this is similar, that same sort of time frame with the materials going out in December, due by May. BAS has an intermediate deadline. If you have everything in by May, like I said, it'll be reflected then in the BAS shape files that would come out the next December. But some of our programs, our Population Estimates program and our American Community Survey, they need to get the geographic data in by summertime to tabulate their data. So if you want your boundaries reflected in their tabulations, they have to be in by March. If anyone has any questions about that, I can answer those. Again, we talked about PSAP. I think we hit everything. You may be hearing about that. They'll send invitations out later this year, and they usually go with like regional planners and the local governments to try to get assistance. And LUCA, Jim will be here a little bit later to talk about. LUCA, how many people said they are working on LUCA? Okay, so that's, that's happening now. So.
And you guys all got your materials already?
Okay. Okay. So I just going to take, what's my time here? Okay, I'm doing all right. a couple minutes to sort of explain then how we store all these data. And I'm not going to go into, I'm not a database administrator or anything. I don't know, fully understand it all myself, but I think it is helpful so that you can understand why we collect the data the way we do. So we store it in a huge Oracle database. All of the spatial and address data are stored together. And you'll hear, we used to have it separate where we had the master address file, and then we had Tiger, which is topologically integrated geographic encoding and referencing system. Probably a lot of you have heard of Tiger. They did combine those, so all that data is now integrated. And it's a large database, it's well over 50 terabytes, and we need to be efficient in how we store things. So we store everything on kind of these building block levels that we call nodes, edges, and faces. And some of you may be familiar. I don't know why my labels decided not to show up there, but I'll just use my pointer. So, this isn't, I obviously stole this slide. I didn't realize this was somebody animated it, that's why. So edges are lines. I mean, that's pretty simple. You have, actually, I'm just going to bring them all in. Okay, because that's how I was practicing. All right, so nodes are your points. An edge is what you would draw between two nodes, and it's basically a line, but it has no attribution to it. And then faces are what are bound by edges, so it's a polygon. We have to use fancy terms, I guess. But edges and faces they have no sort of attributes on them until we apply those. And that is, once we apply an attribute to an edge, then it becomes like a linear feature. So you can see here in this example, we have our edge. Well, that edge happens to be the boundary of Fairview Township, the boundary between Fairview and Lee Townships. So now that edge has an attribute on it that says you're a geographic area boundary between these two townships. It also happens to be a road. It's Fairview Avenue. S1400 is a code that we give for a neighborhood road. It's coded as an S1400. So this one edge now has two different attributes on it, as a boundary and as a road, but we're only storing one edge. So if someone came in and said, oh, that road is misshaped, it should be straight, and they have a weird kink in it, and they fix that kink, they're not only changing the kink in the road, they're also fixing the kink in the boundary. Does that make sense? So,
what if there's actually a kink in the boundary? Is it a different edge?
They would have to add a new edge. So, but that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at all the data, is when you're making a change, if you're doing like a reshape like that, if it should actually be a new edge or we need to do a reshape. We'll talk about it when we get into GUPS. But that's just important to know. And sometimes when people are making a boundary correction, like we have to kind of make those judgments on our end, unless, and that's kind of why we have some of the rules about why it's submitted the way it is. And we'll get to that. But I just wanted you to kind of understand that we're trying, just for efficiency's sake, rather than in storing line upon line upon line for whatever it could be, we're just storing that one edge and attributing it. It also is a good thing because if the boundary is the road, if we did have separate edges, say that was a city boundary and a township boundary and a county boundary and the state boundary, we'd have to do that reshape exactly the same 5 different times, whereas with this structure, we only have to do it once. So there are pros and cons to the way that the database is structured. And this is just kind of another example of that. You see this relationship with the voting district is within the incorporated place, is within the county, and then you see on the bottom there that edge that sort of bounds the top, and they're all kind of integrated. It's the same thing with that one face. If you think of where that voting district is, let's say that's one face. That face is attributed as being within this voting district, within this same place, within this county, and it's all just the same one base. And this image is sort of intended to sort of give you a sense of where this all comes to play. I don't know how well you can see there, but the image on the left, I'm going to forget. One of them is a voting precinct boundary, and the image on the right is the in place. And you can see that this makes it a little more clear. And then that blue line is a water feature. So you can see we have the dotted line as one boundary, the green line as the other, and they're all like interweaving. So what we'd really want to do in a situation like this is put all of those boundaries right on top of each other and on one edge. And that's probably how it's supposed to be. But people were submitting these boundaries at different times, and we got the water feature at another time, and they all went in. And now we have all these strange little faces in there. And where that really comes into play is when we create our census blocks, because remember I told you that all entities are automatically census block boundaries, which means if this dotted line was the place boundary and this green line was the voting precinct boundary, we're going to have a tiny little sliver block there, a tiny one here, all the way down this whole. And it could be the water feature would be block boundary. It wouldn't necessarily be one.
But sometimes you have the water feature, which would change with time, but the county boundary might be based on a historical water feature. So it might,
you might be legit.
Not quite as confusing, maybe.
Yeah. Sometimes it's legitimate. That's the nice thing about the legal geography, because you usually have that documented. This is just another example of where we had two lines that probably we had a bad precinct boundary in blue and a good in-place boundary in red, and they were supposed to be coincident. And you can see that that's actually going to impact housing. We're going to count certain people as being outside of a voting precinct and inside the place. Okay, so that's a quick and dirty on GUPS, or I'm sorry, on our geographic, kind of how we structure the data and run the programs. Does anybody have any quick question, or it doesn't have to be a quick question, questions on that? I know I zipped through it because I didn't want to spend a ton of time. I'd like to get into GUPS as quickly as possible, but.
Essentially, it's a relational database.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we have a little video that we just put out on GUPS.
The U.S. Census Bureau collects the most comprehensive data on the nation's people, places, and economy. This data is used to determine the annual allocation of more than $675 billion in federal funding for infrastructure, programs, and services. Every 10 years, the Census Bureau conducts the decennial census to provide the population data used to apportion seats in the House of Representatives and determine boundaries for areas such as congressional and state legislative districts. To collect the information needed to conduct the decennial census, as well as a variety of ongoing annual surveys about people and their communities, the Census Bureau reaches out to tribal, state, and local governments to participate in Census Bureau programs which collect geographic data. Participating governments can provide updated maps for a variety of geographic areas, such as legal boundaries, addresses and roads, school districts, statistical areas, and redistricting boundaries. And the easiest to use, most efficient, and most cost-effective method for participation in these Census Bureau programs is use of the Geographic Update Partnership Software, or GUPS. To ensure the most accurate reporting of geographic data, the Census Bureau has built GUPS on top of QGIS, the fully functioning geographic information system. Program participants with experience using GIS will appreciate some familiar features GUPS offers, such as customized tools, current high-resolution aerial map imagery, standardized data, pre-formatted files and pre-symbolized map layers, and automatic processing. GUPS has also been designed for those without extensive GIS knowledge and is user-friendly, features an intuitive interface and streamlined processes, and best of all, is free to participants. Additionally, GUPS has many built-in checks to help produce the best results. Combined with the convenience of its many features, GUPS is the best means of participation in Census Bureau programs for collecting geographic data. Except where noted, the following examples illustrate the use of GUPS for the Boundary and Annexation Survey, or BAS. However, GUPS is available for these Census Bureau programs. no real addresses or Title 13 data are being shown in this video. Installation and setup of GUPS is easy. Program participants can download GUPS for multiple programs from census.gov or request copies on DVD. Installation of GUPS, including importing your local area map files, is automated. You are ready to get going with GUPS. GUPS offers a robust and easy-to-use interface, including not only standard navigational and GIS tools, but also tools customized for functions specific to census programs which collect geographic data. In GUPS, participants can import maps of their own local geography. These spatial map files are most commonly Esri shapefiles. Users can customize the appearance of layers, turn layers on and off, and view and compare their geographic files with those of the Census Bureau. Turn on imagery in GUPS to better see houses in relation to geographic data, such as boundaries and roads. The LUCA interface for GUPS allows users to search, view, and update addresses. In BAS GUPS, participants can update linear features, for example, adding roads. GUPS allows users to make boundary corrections, which are the correction of incorrectly recorded boundaries. Users can also make boundary changes, the movement of legal boundaries to reflect addition or deletion of land. GUPS allows participants to view Census Bureau boundaries and submit changes and corrections. Built-in quality control checks identify and create lists of errors for review and correction. When participants export files from GUPS, GUPS packages the files into one zip file containing all relevant documents and information. And finally, participants upload and submit the zip file to the Census Bureau via the Secure Web Incoming Module, or SWIM. As additional resources, unique user guides are available for BAS, LUCA, SDRP, and RDP. GUPS is just right, a one-stop shop for participation in Census Bureau programs which collect geographic data. Every year, the Census Bureau identifies tribal, state, and local governments for participation in different census programs for collecting geographic data. If your government has been contacted to respond to a specific program, the Census Bureau encourages participating by using GUPS. Please see the following information about getting started with GUPS. For programs for the 2020 census, Local Update of Census Addresses, or LUCA, and Participant Statistical Areas Program, or PSAP. And for ongoing programs, Boundary and Annexation Survey, or BAS, School District Review Program, or SDRP, and Redistricting Data Program, or RDP.
All right, so I can skip, I think, these next couple slides. Has anyone used GUPS already, or opened it, or used QGIS? Okay. Yeah, except for Megan, yeah. So it is built on QGIS open source software, so that's available to everyone. And I think the video covered these slides, so we'll skip through that. I did want to point out, too, a couple URLs. If you have questions, I put up the one for the BAS and the Redistricting Data Office. But if you just go to census.gov and type in geography, it'll take you to our geography homepage, and you'll see links to all of those programs, LUCA. And I can, I don't know if you wanted these slides, but I can.
Yeah, if you could get the slides.
Yeah, I can email. I have everyone's email on the sign-in sheet, so I can email this to everyone as well. What's that?
I didn't sign in.
Oh,
When
oh
you're
no,
registered.
you're registered. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's get into the GUPS. Everyone should have GUPS installed on their computer, so I'm not going to go over that. It's pretty easy if you need to do it back at your office. We have DVDs you can request if you haven't received one, or you can go on, if I just mentioned census.gov, search geography, and you can download it from the web. And it's install wizard. It's pretty standard. Usually, if anyone's having issues, it's with their admin privileges at their workplace. All right, so let's start by opening GUPS, and it does appear on your desktop as QGIS icon. Whoops, that's the browser. everybody see that? Yeah, everyone can go ahead and open it. Can everyone see the? All right, does everybody see something similar to this? So the first thing you'll see here is this map management screen. And I can go through a few of the features of that. This is where you're going to select what program you're working on and what county or entity you want to work on. Since I'm with Redistricting Data Office, most of what I'll show you today is from the Voting District Project, but don't worry if you don't work on Voting District Project and you're like, I want to see BAS or LUCA. Voting districts are kind of a nice geography to learn on, and because they don't overlap, they nest within county, there's a few features to them. And in the Voting District Project, you can do BAS updates, so I'll be showing you the BAS updates within there. And then my plan was to go through everything in the Voting District module, then we'll open the BAS module, and you can see there's only like 2 things that are different that I'll point out. And then I'll also show the tribal, since we have the Blackfeet Nation here, I'm going to show the tribal BAS module, and you'll just see, and there's just another couple things that are different there. But you will see that doing an update to one kind of entity in one program is almost exactly the same for everything. So once you know how to do it in one place, you know how to do it pretty much everywhere. So you will want, the data, have they created, the data was loaded, but okay. All right, so we're going to select Voting District Project. That's the one we're going to work on. Our state is Montana. And the examples I picked, I chose Custer County for examples here. So our working county is going to be Custer. So you'll see that all of the counties in the state show up on our drop-down list. These ones highlighted in yellow are the counties that are adjacent to your working county. So sometimes if you're working on an entity that crosses county boundaries, you might want to also display the adjacent counties. If you want to do that, you just have to check the box. I wasn't going to do that. Probably if you don't have that, well, yeah, it will take longer to load, so I wouldn't suggest doing it now, but that's what that the yellow highlighting is. So we'll just go with Custer, so I won't check any boxes here, and click Open. And I'm going to cheat. I'll show you another thing. I already have this project created. So up in here, if you've had a project you've been working on, you can also click that Open Recent, and you'll see all projects that you've recently been working on, and you can open them from here. So I'm going to do that, but since you probably all don't have projects yet. Okay, so as you saw, there are 3 ways you can download the data. If you already have it stored on your computer, and you can FTP the data from our website. You can do it that way, which is what we just did. The Census Web option is pretty cool if you've got a good internet connection. I was a little bit worried about using that over Wi-Fi in a hotel. I'm sure. And I tried it. I did it actually last night in my room, and it took forever, which is why I opened from a recent project. But it's pretty cool if you've got a good Wi-Fi connection. It's actually, when I do it at my home Wi-Fi or in the office, it's super fast. It just grabs all the data from our website and automatically loads it in. And then you have the CD/DVD option. So we do have the data discs on CD that you can pop in your drive. So there's 3 ways you can download your data, which is probably how you actually got it on the computer.
Yeah, we used our disc.
And then you probably got that. And this is unique for the Voting District Precinct Project. You got that, which data set you want to start with. And that's just, some people want to start, if their 2010 voting districts haven't changed much, they just want to do some small edits to those. You could start with a blank slate, which would be building up your voting districts from scratch. And then you can also import your own shapefile. But we're just going to start with our 2010 VTDs today. All right. So everyone has, it probably doesn't look like my screen. It's probably looks something like that. Maybe it's has some fill in it. I think I turned some of my layers off. That's probably why mine might look a little bit different. But everybody has the Custer County up, right? Okay. So this is the GUPS interface. So let's just take a couple minutes and kind of give you a little tour here. I'll start up here. This is our standard toolbar. Everybody here has worked with, what I actually should have asked that. I'm assuming most people have worked with some kind of GIS. No, okay, that's good to know too. Okay, no problem then. So as the video said, this is designed for the new user as well. So, okay, so we'll go through. Everyone has a save icon. If you ever need to switch your counties or go back, this is your map management. So that'll bring back that box we just saw, and you can select a different program or a different county and start a new project. This tool, if you're ever want to completely blow out a project, you've made a mess of it, and you want to start completely from scratch, you can use this tool to delete entire projects. If you want to delete every GUPS project you ever did, you could do this by cleaning all GUPS data. It's a handy tool. It's really powerful though. Once you select a project and click OK, it's gone. So use with caution. The other thing that's handy about this tool is it does show you where GUPS is stored and where your data are stored, and your log files, which if you ever do have a problem and you need to call the help desk, they might want to see a log file, and if you ever be like, I have no idea where they are, this is where it tells you that location. There's also an option here to change your folder. When you download a GUPS, it's automatically storing it in this default location. If you have space issues at your office, for some reason you want to store it somewhere else, you can change that here. Okay, then we have search zoom. This is a way of searching and zooming to different places on the maps, and I'll demonstrate that when I get into it. Basically, you can search by a street name. You can kind of know where a street is. You can type in the street name, click find, and it'll zoom you to that street. This is if you're using a touch screen and you want to be able to zoom and pan. So, okay. Then we have our pan hand. If you click on this, you can zoom. Actually, you can move around on the map with your pan tool. I'm going to skip this one for a second. So this is your zoom in. So you want to zoom into an area. And then I'll come back to that one. Zoom out. Just click on that. Click on the map. It'll zoom out. You want to go back to your full extent. You've gotten so zoomed in you forgot where you are, and you want to go back to the full extent of the whole thing. Actually, I think that took me back to Montana or the U.S. maybe. Yeah, it took me way out. For example, if you had your place layer selected over here and you wanted to zoom, why is it doing that? Must have something selected. Okay. Zoom to selection. I'll show you these selection tools in a second. Zoom to layer. So over here, maybe if you have a layer selected over here, like for right now I have the place layer selected and I want to zoom to an extent that'll just show me those places, I can zoom to the layer. You were zoomed in somewhere and you want to go back to where you just were, you can click zoom last. It'll take you to the zoom extent you were just at. You want to go back to the one you were at, it'll zoom you back to there. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and show you some of these identify tools and selection tools. So if you zoom in, you'll notice not all the layers display. If you're zoomed out really far, you won't see the roads. They're set to only display when you're at a certain zoom level. And I'm going to make my map view space a little larger. So say I see this water feature. I want to know what it is. This is your identify tool. If you click on that, click on the feature, it'll highlight, and then this box appears over here that tells you what all its attributes are. There's a lot of information here. A lot of it's just internal codes and that sort of thing. The ones I'm usually interested in is what kind of feature it is. This MTFCC, that's our Math Tiger feature class code. We have manuals for all this software, and there's appendices that define those. Usually you only need to learn a couple because that's what you'll use all the time. And H3010 is a stream or river. So I know that's a stream or river, and then the named field's usually the one I'm always interested in. In this case, it's unnamed. So if you ever need to try to know what it is, you can use your identify tool. And I'll close that box. And then your selection tools. We're going to use this a lot today. If you want to select a feature, there are several ways you can select, and I will go over those when we get into an actual example. But just to show you this, if you've clicked on this and then you click on, I'm going to click on Caprock Road here. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And now I've selected it. Now I can go back and show you some of these. Here's your zoom to selection. So once you have a feature selected, you can use some of these other tools, and it will zoom you to what you selected. And we'll be using the selection tool a lot today. It's going to stay selected until you clear it, and that's what this next button is with the little red circle with the line through it. We'll clear that. We don't want to have that selected anymore. Clear that.
Well, I lost my map entirely.
Okay.
Megan,
Okay.
come again.
This you can select features using an expression. We won't really use that. You can write expression. For example, if you wanted to select all streams, you could say select every feature where the MTFCC equals at H3010. You can play with that if you want. Your measure tool. So this it has a little side drop down. You can measure linear or area. So I want to know how far it is from this road to this little curve in the stream. You just click on the road, drag your mouse, click on the other end, and it'll tell you, right click when you're done, and it'll tell you that is 141 meters. If you don't like meters, you can switch it to feet, nautical miles, whatever you like. You can also measure area. So you take this drop down, measure area, and then again, just select your space on the map. Just click to put in your vertice points to draw your area. Right click when you're done. And this is 14 hectometers. What is this? Usually it gives me something like, I think I hadn't closed it from before. Let me try this again.
Can't you go down your feet?
But it's area.
Yeah, but I think that it just doesn't say that it's squared. Just choose feet.
Okay.
So I bet it says squared.
Right. Okay. So it's 36 acres.
Just
I don't know why it's saying feet.
acres.
I know, whatever. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, if you need to measure area, you can play with that. All right. So those are standard QGIS. This is nothing, all those tools up there really have nothing, they're going to be on anything. And then your last two here are bookmarks. If you're at an extent of the map that you want to know you're going to want to return to, you can add a bookmark. You can see I have a few here. And you can name it, I'll just name it test, add, oops, close that, and then this area tool can be annoying because if you forget to click on something else, it just, every time you click on the map, it's trying to measure something. Let me use my pan button and let's go away. And then I'm like, oh, I want to go back to that area I bookmarked. I click on this, the list of bookmarks comes up. Here's the one I just made called test. I'll select it and I'll say I want to zoom to it, and it'll take me right back. This is great when you're doing these kinds of workshops and trainings because I can save bookmarks where I want to have examples. Okay, so those are just standard kind of navigate around the map, select and identify tools. I'm going to skip, this is your GUPS toolbar with your specific GUPS tools. I'm not going to go over that now because that's what we're going to do the rest of the morning. But obviously this is your map view area where you can see your maps. This is your table of contents or your list of layers. Every program, voting districts or BAS or PSAP, we sort of customize. In PSAP, you're probably not going to have a voting district layer because it's not really relevant. So they're customized what layers appear. We are pretty good about making sure that it's always symbolized the same. So a place when you're using voting districts looks exactly like a place when you're using the BAS module. But you can see we have the shape files here. There are in the reference materials, if you're not sure what these layers stand for, they're not named very intuitively, but we have our voting districts, census tracts, block groups. Yours might be in a slightly different order because I think I was a little bit playing around with these before, so I not had them for the default. If you want to move them around, you can. Say I want my, I'm going to turn on block, I'm going to turn on my tab blocks and say I want them to draw on top of my edges for some reason. I don't know why you would want to do that. You can take this and drag it up, and they're drawing on top of the edges. It's not a good example because the tab blocks have no fill, so you can still see your edges through them. But if you want to rearrange the order in which they draw, you can do that by just simply, it draws the layers on the bottom are drawing on the bottom, and as you go up that list, everything's drawing on top of that. So usually you want your edges on top so you can see your roads and everything. You'll also notice that some of these layers have these little plus signs over here. So if you click on the plus sign on your edges layer, you can see there are sort of subcategories. They're all linear features, but we have railroads, we have non-visible boundaries. So by expanding that category, you can see the different symbologies that apply to all of the different kinds of edges. Another one that comes in handy are the area landmarks, AREALM. You can see all the different kinds of area landmarks, and they're all symbolized a little bit differently. So our parks are in a light green, the correctional facilities are in yellow. So you can expand, or if you want to close those, you can do that too. So these are all your layers. The checked ones are displaying. Okay. Over here we have, if you want to bring in other data, you can do that. If you have your own shapefile that you want to bring in as a reference, this button here on top, add a vector layer. If you click on that and then click browse, you can browse to wherever on your computer you have your shapefile, and it'll add that to the table of contents, and you can use that as a reference. There's all different kinds of data you can add. That's probably the most used is the shapefile one. If you have any raster kind of data, that would be this button right below it. And then the other one some people tend to use would be this 1/4 from the bottom, and that's a web mapping service. So if you have one of those, if you don't have one, you don't have to worry about it, but you can go ahead and click new here and type in the name and the URL if you have a web mapping service and add that in as well. Those are probably the three I've ever heard of anyone using. And then finally down here at the bottom we have our scale and the coordinates. So as you pan around the map, you can see those coordinates are changing. So it's giving you the coordinate location of the center of your map view if you ever just want to know where you're at. You can also type in a coordinate location. If you have a coordinate location you want to go to it, you can type it in down there. All right. Any questions on kind of that? We'll be using these tools throughout the day, and you'll see the ones you'll tend to use the most. All right, so we're going to start with our BTDs. So make sure your BTD 2010 layer is turned on. And your BTD current layer is turned on. And I think current was probably default on. Okay. And
BTD.
Yeah, they don't know what that means.
Yeah.
oh, voting district.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Voting district is our generic term because some states might refer them as precincts, some might call them wards, some call them election districts.
Is there a legend somewhere to this?
It is in the documentation that what all those shapefile and layer names and I did bring, so this is the Bass one. It looks overwhelming, but
It's got lots of
it's
pictures.
all pictures. They screenshot like every possible step, which is great. So it really isn't that bad. But yeah, in the appendices, there's a list of all the shapefile names and what they are, as well as those MTFCC codes that I talked about. And I have the voting district one too. I have that one. Okay, so I'm going, one trick I use a lot, I want to kind of get my bearings here because I've been zooming in and out. I'm not sure what your screens look like. I want to get back out to look at the whole county together. So we can do that by going back up to the zoom to layer button. But a little trick I use all the time, so I'll show you. If you just right click on the layer, your zoom to layer is there. So I usually just do that. It's just a little faster, I think. All right. So we're going to start changing our voting districts. So in all the geographies, and as I mentioned, voting districts is kind of a nice one to start with. But whether you're doing it with an place or a township or a school district or whatever, you're usually doing one of four things. You're adding area to it, you're taking area away, you're creating a new one, or you're deleting an existing one. And the main toolbar we're going to use all the time, you'll get very familiar with, is this Modify Area Feature tool. It looks, I think, like a little head, but we have discussions about this sometimes what it looks like. But this is the one. So if you click on that and open that, you should see this. And the other thing about these boxes is that you can dock them. So I like to usually drag this over here and it'll dock right in there. I just find that a little bit easier, and then you can still see a lot of your map. Everybody good? Okay. So the first thing you have to do when you want to modify area is you need to select which geography. So if you click on this drop-down list, and you can see in the voting district project you can update any of those geographies in your list. And that's why I was saying this is very much like Bass, because Bass has a very similar list. So we're going to start by actually modifying our voting districts. So I'm going to select that for now. And you'll see whatever geography you select, it's going to give you a list of all of the entities of that geographic type that exist in your county, in your working county. And we have precincts 1 through I think 14 here. And if you click through the list, the one you're going to modify, you want to always make sure it's highlighted because you've clicked on it. And you can see as I click through, you can see them highlighting on the map. And if you double click on one, it'll zoom you to it. These two blue arrow buttons is another way to navigate through the list. It'll just take you down the list. If you click on the down one, it'll zoom you to each entity. And again, this could be a list of in places, and it would work exactly the same way. You can go up or down on this list. This is handy, like if you want to review your area landmarks and you're just kind of want to go through and look at each one and make sure nothing looks strange. You can literally just click this button. All right, that looks okay. That looks okay. That looks okay. And just go through your list. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is add area. We have a precinct that we need to add some area to, so I need to look at my notes and see what my example is going to be. So I'm going to, I know I want to add some area from precinct 5 to precinct 4, so I'm going to use my list here, and I'm going to zoom to precinct 4. And again, I can either double click on it. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Okay, and I need to add this area here around the railroad. We need to make this a little bit more compact. So next thing, I'm going to go to my zoom tool up here on our standard toolbar. Okay, and we'll just, you can either click on this or you can hold down your mouse and kind of draw the box around the area you want to zoom to. Need to get my picture. And I zoomed in a little too far, so I'm going to click my zoom out button here and just click on it a couple times. So you use your zoom and pan tools to sort of get to where you want to be. So we're going to add this area up in here. So just try to get your map zoomed kind of to this extent. Everybody pretty good? Are you here? Is everyone pretty much at this spot? Okay. Okay.
Zoomed in.
All right. So once we get to where we want to be, we want to add this area from precinct 5, oops, sorry, my mouse is getting funny, to this greener area, which is precinct 4. So we need to select, we need to select the area we want to do, and that's where this selection tool comes in. And I showed you the selection tool up here. It's the same exact tool. In fact, if I click on it, you'll see it highlights it in both places. It's just the convenience of having all your tools for modifying area right here. Yeah, other than your zoom and pan tools up on this toolbar, all those other ones I went over you probably aren't using a whole lot. We sort of took the main ones you'd be using for GUPS and just repeated them here in this tool. Okay, so the selection tool, you'll notice, has this little arrow next to it. And you can see there's a few different ways you can select faces. And that's what we're doing. We're selecting those faces and adding faces to the geography. So you can, if you put select features, you can select one face at a time. You can see if you click on anywhere in that precinct 5 area, it's going to select. I'm just going to quickly go through the selection options here. And if I click on another one, it deselects the first one. So if you hold down to your control key while you're selecting one by one, it should add new ones to your selection. You can do it that way. If you realize you want to start over, actually this is one up on that bar. This selection, you have this selection with the line through it, you can do that and that'll clear your selection if you realize, oh, I screwed up, I want to start over. Another way to select is by polygon. I'll just run through these now and I've tried to make sure I use a variety of them because you'll see how some are good for other situations. Select by polygon, you can, if you hold down your mouse and kind of draw, clicking at the corners, draw an area, and then right-click when you're done. It'll select all the faces that even part of falls within the polygon you've drawn. I'm just going to clear that one so I can show you. There's select by freehand, where you just click on a point, drag, whoops. You can kind of draw your own shape, however you want to do it. And again, it'll select every face that falls within the shape you've drawn. Clear that. And select by radius will draw a circle from the point you click on and select faces that way. And select by geography, I'll show you that a little later. that's if you say you had a census tract and you wanted the entire tract to be part of your precinct, you could actually just select a whole tract or a whole place or something like that. So those are all your different selections. The one that I tend to use the most is either the one face at a time or the select by polygon. A lot of people use freehand. I just, for whatever reason, never got in the habit of that. Okay.
When you select by radius, does it pick everything within the circle or everything that crosses the circle?
Everything that crosses the circle. So like if I just put that little bit right down there, did you see that? It selected that. Okay. All right, so I want to select everything from this orange line, which is a boundary of some kind, all the way over to here and then down I-94 business. All these faces in here is what I want to add to precinct 4. So I'm going to use, you can also use a combination of these, which I do a lot too. I'm going to use my polygon. You can do it however you like, and draw as much as I can within the polygon. And then I can see I didn't quite grab that one up here, so if I hold down my control key and then go back to where I'm just selecting one at a time to get that last face in, I should be good. And if you're an eagle eye, you'll realize I missed a couple down here, but I'm going to do that deliberately because we're going to show you some of the QC tools that will catch that later.
And you also selected.
Right, that should be okay because we're adding it to that one. Oh yeah, I'll have another example a little later where I show how to avoid that. Because we're just saying make these part of the voting precinct 4 and it already is 4, so it should be okay. Okay, so I've selected the faces I want to add. I'm making sure precinct 4 is highlighted here. That's the one I want to modify. And then all I do is click that green plus sign. And boom, it's added. It's really easy.
Seems like it'd be nice to have like on ArcView where it highlighted a little better. Or, you know,
yeah.
In ArcView when you select something, the polygon is highlighted.
Yeah.
The bright blue or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And this one, maybe it's just me that
no.
colors. I wasn't sure if I had what I had.
Right, it is, I agree with you, and that's the QGIS part that it's built on. The highlighting isn't always great, and there are actually, sometimes I can't see it at all, and I was worried that might happen today. No, no, and that's just the QGIS. One of the ways we're able to offer this for free, though, is by building on a free software. So it's, but
I had that trouble too, and the only way I know is at the bottom, I didn't know the number that's selected, the polygons will change, so it's like.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's a good.
Oh, one selected.
Okay.
Click on it again. Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, and you can always undo things. Like if I had, now I may not have noticed these two ones I missed weren't selected.
Right.
But then I click add and I'm like, oh, I missed those, and I can always select them now and add them again. And so another way.
And is that little one that you didn't select down there, is it a polygon, so you can just go select by polygon and grab it? And
Yeah, like I'll fix, I could just do that select feature and select this. Again, you can barely see, and if I click that green, I'll just do it, as long as I have one mistake to show you. And now it's fixed.
But you could also change the color that the voting districts are symbolized in, if that maybe
Yes, you could do that as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that might help.
Contrasting, yeah.
All right, so we've modified your first area by adding to it. The one unique thing about voting districts is because they have to cover the entire county, you actually can't remove area from a voting district. Instead, you would just add whatever area to some other voting district. Does that make sense? So if we were, and we'll do this a little later, I just kind of want to run through these other tools. If we were to want to select faces and remove them from an entity, you would use the minus sign, and we'll do that in a little bit. Okay. Now that was easy because we already had all the lines in place that already existed here that defined what we wanted to add. But let's say we also wanted to add just this little section of precinct 5 to precinct 4, but we can't, if I select that face, it's selecting this whole going off the screen. I don't want all of that added. I just want this little triangle piece. So we're going to have to add a line. So let me just clear that for now. So I'm going to show you the linear tools now. So let's first zoom into that area. And up here, so here was our modify area tool. Here's our line tools. We have an add linear feature, and you can delete a linear feature. We'll do that one later. But for right now, let's just click on add linear feature. And you'll see you get this pink crosshair. It's right up here, this line with the green plus sign. Everybody got that? Okay. And you'll see you get this little pink kind of crosshair. I'm going to place that where I want to start my line. Click and drag. You'll see it draws this little pink line, and I just want it to be straight down, just to kind of cut off here to I-94 business. And I'll click again here, and I'll right click to end the line. Right with me? Yeah. That's a good point. So it's automatically, you'll see, like when I draw, if I am a little short, it's automatically connecting it. It's snapping that. It's assuming that you want to join in together. And when you do that, you're going to get this. It's going to want you to tell you a little bit, what kind of line is this? What's it? And so that's where these feature class codes, MapTiger feature class codes come in. So you need to tell it what kind of line it is. Good news is you don't have to know all the codes. It tells you what they all mean. Again, there's a huge list here, and you'll probably use 2 or 3 ever. So you'll learn what those are if you do those. In this case, the only thing this is it's an invisible voting district boundary. It's not a road, it's not a stream, and that's a P001. You'll see that a lot. So I'm just going to scroll right down to P001 here. Non-visible legal statistical boundary.
So that's what she's saying here. So now you want to.
So I tell it that, and you'll notice name is grayed out because they don't have names. It's just a non-visible boundary. If it was a road, it would want you to enter a road name, a street name or something. So I'll click OK. And so now I've essentially split that big long face into the face I want to work with, into 2 faces. So I'll go back to my modify area, use my select tool to select that face. And I'm going to get this little guy down here also. So you'll note that you only had to add this line here because I already had existing lines to use there. I had those road features that I could use. So you didn't need to draw this entire area. Okay, so I've selected those faces. I'm going to use my green area to add it. And I've made the change. Okay. All right. Everybody good? It's relatively good so far? All right. The other thing, make sure you're saving your work. I once did a workshop or a training with the state of Ohio. I did all these changes. I made all my little mistakes so I could show the QC tools. And right before I did QC at the end, my whole project crashed, and I realized I hadn't been saving it at all. Not good. So I literally had to write in my notes here, save. Okay, so we've seen.
I get rid of that line, but I realize now that I screwed up. That is a problem.
Okay, I was going to do that later, but we'll do it now. No, we can do it now. So, if you realize that's wrong, I didn't want to add that line, you would use this linear feature tool with the red X. Delete. We'll select that tool, click on the line, and it says, are you sure you want to delete it? Say yes. And it's gone. Now you're probably going to have a problem later because you've got that area added and no line change associated with it. Like you might get a topology issue area later. So you might also need to remove that area.
Okay.
But I'll show you some more examples of the, I'm going to put it back so I don't get a topology error. Okay. All right, so the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to create a new one. And you're going to see it's the same thing. It's selecting faces and then pushing a button to either add them, remove them, create a new thing or not. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit to get my bearings here. A lot of times I like to turn off my streets, that edges layer, and the area landmarks, because it sort of clutters things up a bit. And I have my tab blocks on too. Okay. So in my scenario here, I know that I have my precinct 1 and I need to create a new precinct that's precinct 15, and I'm going to use part of precinct 1 to do it. So let me get zoomed into precinct 1 here, and again I can use my list over here and just double click to zoom in. And I'm just going to, and I know we have people here from Custer County, so I have to apologize. One, if I mispronounce any names, and two, if I'm doing ridiculous changes that you would never do in your life. But, so I'm going to take this area here. Actually, I'm going to turn my edges back on. And I'm going to say north of this abandoned railroad, no. Sorry, let me go back. Previous extent. Okay, actually, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. I'm going to create a new voting district down in this area. We decided we have enough population that we need to create a new district here. So it's kind of where the intersection of precinct 4, 1, and what was that other one? Two. Nah, a little too far. Is everyone kind of in this area? I'm sorry, I was moving around quite a bit there. Everyone kind of in that general area? Okay. So it's our same philosophy here. We're just going to select our first faces. But somebody, another feature you might want to do is, I know that the faces that are going to make up this new precinct 15 are only coming from precinct 1. And since it's right on the edge of these other two precincts, I also want to make sure I don't accidentally grab any of their area. So one of the ways you can do that is by using this locking tool. So I want to lock precinct 4 and 2, and what that means is no faces will be, they can be selected, but they can't be moved. And I'm actually only going to lock precinct 2 because I actually want to make a mistake so that you can see what I mean. So let's, again, you always have to have modified in your info box over here the one that you're taking the action on. So I'm actually going to go and just highlight precinct 2. And lock it with this lock area tool up in here. And it's saying, are you sure you want to lock that area? And I say yes. And that's just like a precautionary thing. But the real district I'm modifying is precinct 1, so now I need to make that the active. So I can either click on it here. Another tool up here that you can use is select target area. Rather than highlighting it on the list by clicking on it in the list, you can also, if you select this tool and then click on it on the map, And you can see by doing that, it highlighted it in the list too. That can be handy when you're really zoomed in and you might not even know what precinct you're in anymore, and you just know you want to select that one. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing that we did just to add area. We're going to use our selection tool. And it doesn't matter. You can select whatever faces. I'm going to turn my edges back on to see. I'm going to try to select this area kind of southeast of the abandoned railroad. And I'll use probably select by polygon. Again, these are just preferences, whatever you're comfortable. And I'm going to draw my polygon, select those faces. Actually, I'm going to be sloppier. Let me, I'm going to undo my selection, do a sloppier polygon so you can see how the lock tool works.
So when I select click by polygon, it goes back to that one that we couldn't get rid of.
Oh, it is? I don't know what that's. All right, so I'm pretty sloppy here. I've gone into all these other areas.
That was from previous, I wouldn't go away.
I can look at that during the break.
We
I don't know
tried
why it's doing
unselecting
that.
it and it didn't unselect.
You know, my secret is just to close it.
That's what I told you.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do too.
So anyway.
All right, and I'll try to clean this up a little bit.
I'm just never going to use this anyway, so I don't know what to do.
All right.
Just included it.
So once you have the faces you've selected that you want to be part of your new voting district, we're going to use this tool up here, Add Entity. Kind of looks like the state of Georgia, I think. And just like when we added that linear feature, it's going to want to know some information about this new entity.
I'm sorry, where was that one?
It's right up here, this green with the green plus. So this is precinct 15, so I know they code it. I'm going to code it. It has to have 6 digits, so we forward pad 0, so up 4 zeros and then 1 5. If this were like a new place, the Census Bureau would assign a code, so you probably wouldn't be asked to enter a code. But because VTDs are state-controlled geography, they get to pick what the codes are. So it will depend on the entity whether or not you have to give it a code or not. And the status, this is something, if you work with voting district, most people are just actual. If you're not, you would know it, so we'll just stick with actual here. The LSAD, that's the legal statistical area definition. This is how, for voting districts, it's kind of boring, but like when you have an ink place, whether it's called a city or a town or a borough, or that's the legal area descriptor, so you would have to tell us what that is. For voting districts, you're basically telling us if you want us to say voting district 15, 15 voting district, or whatever. So in this case, they don't have an LSAT. It's just called precinct 15, period. And that's the name. Precinct 15. And I have no comments about this, so I'm just going to click OK after I've entered the information. And notice here I've selected these faces. These faces are selected. But yet they don't become part of precinct 15 because I locked that district. If that makes sense. So even though it looked like they were selected, they weren't. It wasn't permitting it to add it to something else. So the lock tool is very helpful. But these faces over here, I didn't mean to select, but I hadn't locked precinct 4, so they get added to the precinct. The other thing I should point out, because this throws me all the time, is why is this part of precinct 15 lighter purple and this part is darker? So you really have to pay attention to what layers you have on, because sometimes layers drawing on top of other layers have transparencies. And the one that throws me every time is, and this goes back to how we process the changes. When you submit these changes back to us, all you're really submitting to us are the faces that have switched in terms of which voting district they're assigned to. We're not getting the whole complete outline of each voting district. And so I'm sure you didn't notice, but when we started making changes, GUPS creates this file down here called BTD18 changes BTD. And you don't have to do this, but if I turn off all my other layers and just show you that, you'll see that, and I'll just zoom to it, it's showing just the faces that have now had some kind of a change made to them. So sometimes that layer is sitting on top of your other layers, and if you turn that off, you get to see the complete. So you just, if something looks strange to you, you might just want to turn some layers on and off to try to figure out what something's probably drawing on top of it. Just so you know, and oftentimes it's that faces like changes layer. We'll go through the delete and modify really quickly, and that'll probably bring us to 10. So, okay. So any questions on creating a new entity using that new entity tool? All right. Okay, so another change I know I want to make, and I don't know if it's just me, but I always like to just, and I always use that edges tool and zoom to layer to get me out to that county extent. If you highlight on that, just right click and hit zoom to layer just to get me back, because now I have to go do a new change. And I know that I want to delete precinct 14 completely and add it. So precinct 14 over here, it's just getting merged with precinct 13. Basically. So there's a couple ways you could do that. We could still try to select every face in precinct 14 and use our green plus sign, add area tool, and add it to 13, and that's fine. But I actually want to show you how to delete an entity. So what I'm going to do is delete 14 altogether, then select the faces and add it to 13. We don't even have to zoom in when you're deleting an entire entity because it'll just know to select every face. So all I need to do here is select it in my list, precinct 14, and I can see it's highlighted. And this is what you do if you have a disincorporation or something like that. And then my big red X there, delete area feature. And it's a big change, so it's going to ask you for sure. I am. And you can see it's gone. So deleting is really pretty simple. However, I need to have, these people live here, they need a voting precinct, right? So I do need to combine that with merge that. Actually, what we're doing is we're going to merge these two and create a new one, but I'm going to, and there's different ways you could strategize to do this, but this is just how I'm choosing to do it. So we need to select all the faces within this, and we can't even see them all because we're zoomed out too far. They're not even showing, but you can imagine there's many faces in here. So again, it's personal preference what kind of selection tool you want to use. For a large area, I would probably do the polygon or freehand. The nice thing about this is because we're on the county boundary, if you draw a big polygon, you won't grab any faces you don't need to because they're not on this map. So that's probably what I would do. Select features by polygon and just draw. It's selecting these faces in 13 too, but that's okay because that's what I'm adding everything to. I could have also locked precinct 13 if I wanted to make sure I didn't want to select those faces. I'm going to, you don't have to do that, whoops. I'm going to cheat, not cheat, but I'm going to introduce another error so I can show you something in the QC. So I'm going to unselect one of these faces, but you don't have to do that. You would not normally want to do that.
Don't want to create errors.
Right, because we do have a check for anything that's left unassigned. So. Okay, and then once you have all those selected, again, we just use our green plus sign to add area. We want to make sure we have precinct 13 selected here because that's what we're adding to. And then our green plus sign. Whoops, I lost my selection. Let's maybe reselect.
Because you didn't have your precinct selected or something?
There's gotta be a way to get out of this without having to do that. Otherwise, this is.
I will look at that one at the break. I'm sorry. Feeling bad. Okay.
It's looking obvious here.
Yeah, but once you go back and it's there still.
And this is what I was talking about too, where you wonder why these look different. It's all precinct 13 now. If I turn off that changes VTD layer, you can see that's what's causing the difference in the shading there. So if that's ever throwing you, just, okay. So that's deleting, and again, another example of adding area to an existing. And I'm going to save because I keep, yes, okay. All right, and then the last thing I'll show you before break is modify the attributes. So in this, my scenario here, not only were we adding, what was it, we were getting rid of 14 and adding it to 13. It's actually, we're actually creating a whole new one. We don't want 13 anymore either because it's so different. So we're going to change the name and the code of this entire district using our modify attributes. So this is all 13 now. So again, make sure we have 13 selected here. And again, you could either select it in this list or you could use this tool and click on it on the map. And then this is the final button I haven't showed you on the Modify Area Feature tool yet, which is Change Attributes. And you can see you can't change, obviously, state, county. If you can't change an attribute, you're not, it's grayed out. But in this case, we're going to call this Precinct 15. Or is that what it's 16? Okay. And I also want to make sure I change the code because I want my names to match my codes. So I'll change the code to 16. Everything else is the same. It's the same state, county. It's the same description. It's just called a precinct, and it's an actual. You get. And I'll
So
click
in comments,
OK.
would you want to put, merge these two?
You could. Yeah.
What do they use the comments for?
That's probably what you would use it for, but we would probably assume that if you came. But if it were something more complex, that might throw us. And you'll notice it changed the name on the map, and you'll also notice over here in our list we now have a precinct 16. And I forgot to show you, but that happened when we created the new precinct in the other example. It showed up on this list. All right, I'm going to save. And again, I left my unassigned area for later. But normally you would not want to leave that hanging up. Okay, so we've done a little bit with area. I'm going to close this modify area toolbox because we're going to do a little bit with lines now. And we already added this one line, if you recall earlier. Just to split a face because we wanted to add part of a face to our district, so we had to split that face into the parts that we needed. But with BAS and LUCA and redistricting, you can also just add roads that aren't necessarily boundaries, but they're road features. So let's do a couple examples of that. And the area I've selected, I'm going to zoom to, and I'm going to do that just showing you this search zoom tool I mentioned earlier. Again, this is me just, there's 100 ways you can navigate to a place, maybe not 100, but several. And I know the area that I need to be in is where Atlantic Avenue is. So this is just kind of a handy tool. If you know that, it has our county, and I want to search by, and if you knew a place name you wanted to type in and just go to that place, or a landmark name. In this case, it's a street name, I know. And once I select street, in the street name drop-down, it lists every street in the county that we have a name for. And I want Atlantic, so I'm just going to start typing it. And as I type, it's predictive text, so it pops up. Now I select that, and I want the whole street. If you wanted a certain part of the street and you knew where the address ranges were, you could do that, but I'm just going to say all. And then you just click Find, and it zooms you right there. So that can be a handy tool, that search and zoom tool. And if I click Find and Close, it would have automatically closed the box too. So the area I know I need to add a few roads here is up in this area. So again, I'll use my pan and zoom to get me there a little bit more specifically. Another feature that GUPS has, and I hope it works on the wireless here, is you can add imagery in. And whenever you're adding visible features, or river, stream, or road, we strongly suggest you use imagery. And you can use these tools I talked about earlier if you have your own shape files or your own web mapping service. It's imagery. You could do it that way. But we do provide this. So if I click on this globe here with the green plus sign and cross my fingers that the connection is good. Oh, I think I just made it angry. Okay, you can see down here this is moving. And again, to provide this for free, we have to sometimes work with what we have. This is actually connecting to a USGS service. And we do have, unfortunately, sometimes it does go down, and so it's not always as reliable as we might like, but, you know, it's free. So, but you can see it's not bad when it comes up. So that's available to you to use, and that actually worked pretty well. A little worried. You're always worried when you have to rely on internet. So what I want to do here is, and again, I forget what city I'm in right now in this, but I know I have locals here, so I'm just making up these scenarios. So I see these roads we don't seem to have those. So what I want to do is I want to extend Atlantic Avenue to here, and then this, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, is it New View? Okay, I'm going to extend that. I don't know if that's actually what it should be or not, but if I were a local GIS person, I would know that, right? So,
Yeah, I'm not either.
okay.
And it might be because of the internet connection. So.
I'll turn mine off and we'll just pretend it's there, and but again, when you are writing it, so because we want it to be spatially accurate. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing selections, I'm noticing my Atlantic Avenue is still selected, which may or may not be a problem, but I'm just going to make sure I click this deselect feature, so that's usually when you get stuck on something, it's one of these layers is turned on, or there's some tool you have active that you forgot about. Okay. So again, just like we added the last linear feature, it's exactly the same thing. So a lot of this is just repetitive, but hopefully it'll sink in then. So I'm going to use my add linear feature button here. Again, the green plus sign is always adding something, and the red X is getting rid of something. And I have my little pink crosshair again. I'm going to zoom in a little more closely. We always encourage that too. When you're adding stuff, get nicely zoomed in. And we'll pretend I have imagery here. And you'll see that when you get close to the vertex, it automatically jumps you there. It snaps there. So that's to make sure we don't have any little gaps or overshoots in our digitizing. And then you just press down, click on your mouse, draw your line. If you needed to do vertices, and here we don't, but you would just click everywhere you need a vertice. I'm going to cancel that because it was a straight road here. And it never hurts to add a few vertices in. And again, if we had imagery up, we'd be tracing this. And then when you're done, you just right click. And your info box comes up. And in this case, it is not a non-visible. This is an extension of New View Road. And I probably should have done this ahead of time, and I'll show you actually. If you've already drawn the line, you're fine, but I'm just going to undo mine just to show you what I should have done ahead of time, which is I need to make sure that I'm giving this extension of New View the same attributes that the existing New View has. So I'm going to use my identify tool. You don't have to do this. And just click on New View, and I'll see, okay, that's its name, New View Avenue. And then the other key one is that feature class code, which is an S1400, which that means a local neighborhood road. So I should have done that first, but the reason that can become important is when we are creating, like say we're creating a paper map of something, a lot of times, or when we're creating which layer should appear at different scales. A lot of time, like a neighborhood road might not show up until you're more zoomed in. So if you don't have the same, if you have a, and we have this problem, like for example, an interstate is a S1100, and we have had in the past little segments of it that might have been wrongly classified as a 1400, and then we might make a big map where we're only showing interstates, and you see these little gaps. So that's why it gets important.
Not realistic?
Yeah. So we're going to select our S1400 here to say it's a local neighborhood road, and then we'll type in the name, New View Avenue, and OK. And there it is. It's not great digitizing, but there it is. And then I'm going to do the same thing and extend this Atlantic Avenue. So again, I'll just use my identify tool to make sure I know what the right MTFCC. It's also an S1400. Name's a little easier because it's displayed right there. And I'll use my add linear feature tool. Just connect that. Right click. Select the MTFC of S1400 and type in the name Atlantic Ave. Now let's say, in this scenario, let's say, oh, you know what? I'm going to ignore my imagery, say that was wrong. Atlantic Avenue doesn't extend. New View just kind of dead ends. I shouldn't have added that. If you ever need to delete a road or any kind of a feature, linear feature, then we're going to use our delete linear feature tool here. Just click on that. Click on the feature you want to delete. It'll ask you if you're sure, say OK, and it's gone. Now, there is one distinction I want to show you with the delete linear feature. Now, notice in that case that road completely disappeared. Again, when I told you when we get files back, we're looking at anything that has a change. That's why we have those change line or changes layer. If you add it and delete it, we are actually deleting any record of it ever because we never even knew about it. We never even knew you extended Atlantic Avenue, so we don't need to see that you added it and then see again that you later deleted it. So it completely disappears. Let's say I want to delete this part of Yellowstone Avenue that we already had in our file that we sent you. I would do it the same way. I'd use my delete linear feature tool, click on it, ask me if I'm sure, just like before. I click OK. And you'll notice it's still there, but now it just has black X's on it. And that's because, and you don't have to see or really pay attention to this, but for those who might be interested, if I look at my attributes for that edges layer, there is a field in here. This is just if you're interested, you don't have to know this, called change type. And you can see we have our new view here. That says AL because that's a record we added. And then there should be, where was our DL? There's our DL, Yellowstone, that we deleted. Notice we don't have, and here's the P001, the non-visible we added earlier. Notice I don't have anything in here about Atlantic Avenue because, like I said, as the Census Bureau, when it comes back, we never knew you added it, so we don't need to know you deleted it. That's why, so if it's a line you added and then delete, it'll completely disappear from this display. If it's a line that we gave you that you're deleting, it'll come back. You'll still see it, but you'll see it symbolized, so you'll know the delete went through. And what happens is we will come back and we're going to double check, like that with imagery it really isn't there anymore and that sort of thing. So you'll, just so you know why sometimes it looks like it's completely gone. Okay, another thing you may want to do with linear features is a reshape. So the road, so I'm just going to pan a little bit to the north, and I'm going to look here at South 4th Street. So that's just, here's where we were. Is everybody getting that area? you may want to do a reshape. And I'm not going to turn on the imagery because I don't know if it's true, but you can see that road has a little bit of a curve. Let's say it's there and that's about where it is, but it's not in the right positionally accurate location, and I need to fix that. When you're submitting reshapes to us, you are going to actually do that as a delete add. So what you'll do is you'll delete it as it is and you'll redraw it as an add line in its correct location. So, and it doesn't matter what order you do it in. So first I'll draw it where it should be. So I'll click on my Add Linear Feature tool, and you can make up however you think it should be. The one thing, actually before I start, we do not take reshapes if they are less than 30 feet off. And our goal is about 30 feet accuracy with our data. So if you think this should be 5 feet further west than it should be, we're not going to accept that. We just don't have the resources, and we don't claim that we're that precisely accurate. The only exception would be if it's less than 30 feet, but there's housing units, so it's going to affect where a housing unit gets counted, then we would accept it.
And do you determine that when you guys look at them? Like, we could still submit it if it's 5 feet off because it affects a house. You guys then will look at it.
Right. When they'll have to manually manually process that, and when they do, we have the map spots in there in the database. So
and
see.
Would we have to put any comments or anything?
It would not hurt to put a comment in.
Okay. So
to tell us this impacts housing units. And I think, again, you don't have to do this, but let me zoom it. Let me see. I think it's going to tell you, there's a warning. I haven't tried this in a long time, but let me try to make it real close. Yeah. Well, it won't let you do it within 5 feet, apparently, so I get that error message. And this goes back to what I was explaining in the slides earlier about how we want to be able to use that same one edge to show these other things. We don't want to have, because say this road is also being used as a in-place boundary, then even though you're saying we would want to keep it for the boundary purpose, even if we take the roadness off of it, and then we would have this boundary and this road, and they'd be like 5 feet from each other, and it just gets to be a tangled. You saw that example where you had the 3 lines braiding, and it's just a mess. So we try to avoid it. So let's zoom out a little bit. So, but we would just do this. So I'm just going to say, actually, let me check one thing here. I'm going to reshape a different edge. Well, no, we'll do it. Okay, so I'm going to just add South 4th Street, kind of like that. And let's say there's some houses in there. And again, I'll want to give it the same attributes. So it's an S1400, and it's South 4th Street. I think it'll let me do this, even though there's... And then I want to use my delete linear feature tool, select that, and delete it. Okay, here's another thing you might encounter. I was right, that is a boundary of an existing entity. So it's just warning, you can still proceed with this. It's just warning you that even though you're saying delete this road, if it's being used for something else, we won't delete it. And it just wants you to be aware of that. In this case, it's going to be clear to us that you're reshaping. So even though we're doing it in GUPS as like an add line and a delete line, back at Census, we will actually take the vertices of the point on the one and move them. So we will actually do a real reshape. So boundary would move with the road and everything. So this is fine. Don't be alarmed if you see this. It's just letting you know if you get the data back next year and you still see that line there and you're like, why didn't they delete it? We're just giving you a heads up that if somebody else may want it in there for some reason. Okay, so that's adding and deleting and reshaping linear features. The other thing you may want to do is change a name, say. So let's find a good example. Just change an attribute. So I have Park Street up here, and let's say actually this part of Park Street is changing its name to Elm Street. We have our modify linear feature attribute tool right here. So you can see it's very similar to the modifying area attribute. So just click on that, click on the line that you want to modify. It's telling you what the attributes we currently have for it, that it's a S1400 local neighborhood road named Park Street. We have some address range information. If you have that, you can provide it. You don't have to. And I'm going to just change the name. It's still an S1400, so I can leave that. The TLID, that's the Tiger Line ID number. That's just our internal identifier. You don't have to worry about that. If it needs a new identifier because of the change you made, it'll automatically happen when we upload it into Tiger. And I'll just hit save, and you can see it's changed the name.
But if that whole thing is changed, all of Park Street, you need to do the same thing again, or can you select them all?
Yes. That's a good question. Let's try it. Let me see if I can use my select. I think you might have to
do them each.
Yeah, because when you click on it, automatically pops up. So that's a little annoying.
Especially if you hold.
Yeah, if it went on and on. I wonder if you could. I'm trying something here. Oh, you could. Okay, I think you could. It just won't let me do it. So let me show you that. So let's say 3rd Street here is changing, and I've got two. Let me get to this. That precinct label's not on top. Okay, and you can see if I use my selection tool, you don't have to do this. You can see I select. They're two separate segments, right? One goes from here to here, and one goes from here to here. So if I wanted to change the name of all the segments, instead of clicking right on the modify linear feature tool and then clicking on the segment, I could select all the segments with my selection tool and then click on modify attributes. And it would let me do that. And I'll just do that to make the street. So that's how you can do that. Okay. Okay.
So if you pick them first and open your attribute table, is that right?
Correct. You can do more than one. When I first tried it, the error I got, though, they have to already have all the same attributes. All the segments you pick have to have the same name in MTSCC. All right, and then the last button I just wanted to show you is this. Just I don't use it much, but it could come in handy, and it's this display all names. So that's just for if you have a linear feature that has multiple names. For example, I-94 business route here. If I select that and click on there, it's going to tell me it has an alternate name of Main Street. So sometimes we have people and they're like, you don't have the right name for this road, and you might want to just double check that maybe we just need to switch it from primary to alternate or something. We may have it, we just may not be displaying that particular name. Usually you see that on the state highways.
In our county, a couple areas where state highway going through a little tiny town, it's an unincorporated town, but they named that little segment through town Giant Avenue or something.
Right.
So that's where
Yeah, that's where you could kind of make sure. Only one displays. We may store more than that. I guess if you ever needed to know all of them, you could give us a call or something. But
So I could go and change the primary name to what? Can you change the primary name?
I will have to check on that. I think they don't like that because then if it is like an I-94 and we're showing like it on a map, you want to see it that it's the same road all the way through versus it changing every town we hit. But if you really feel like you need to, you can reach out. We can see. I think that's just how they default it. Okay, I just wanted you to know what that button was. Okay, and then the last thing with linear features I wanted to show was how you might want to split a line. So say you want to change the attribute of part of a segment. So the example I found, and I'm going to use my little search and zoom tool up here again to get there, and it's Parker Lane. So I'm going to use that and search by street name and type in Parker. And I'm going to hit find and close. It should zoom in there and close. Okay. And then I want to, it's selected it, so I want to make sure I deselect it before I start here. So I believe when I looked at this the other day, it's kind of running through a cemetery. This is kind of an entrance road and then a road through. So we're in our scenario, I'm going to say, you know, this isn't right. Actually, when you get to the turn here, it changes. And this segment's not called Parker Lane. It's called Peace Way or something. But again, if I select the segment, you can see that's all one segment. And I want it to change right here. I want to basically split this line. So this is where we use this tool here, the split linear feature. It's the line with the little scissors next to it. And all you have to do is click on that, and you get your crosshair again, and then you just click on where you want to do the split. So I'm going to click on that little turn right there. And you can see it actually is going to select one of your halves or one of your parts. In this case, it's selected. It's kind of random. It's selected this piece, but you can see it's now different because this piece is not selected. So if you wanted to change the name of this piece, you would just have to, you know, well, we could do that, I guess. Use your selection tool to select it, the segment you want to alter. We'll just leave this part Parker Lane, and we'll change this segment. And then you just do that the same way. Now you've just split the line, use your modify linear feature attributes table, and change the name. It works the same way. You just can split that in half. All right. Does anybody have any questions on modifying or adding, deleting, modifying linear features? All right. All right, so I'm going to go through quickly modifying area landmarks, but you're going to see it's very similar to how we did the voting districts, but it is something you can do, and this is for BAS and for, so I should have said that obviously voting precinct stuff was just for redistricting, but all the linear feature stuff we just did, you can do in any of these other programs, and the tools look exactly the same. And area landmark updates we can do in BAS and redistricting. And obviously the BAS entities, places, county subdivisions and stuff. So,
and when we get to PSAP, all those will work.
Yes, when you get to PSAP, if you get involved in doing CDPs, that those will work the same way, being places will work and all that. These are your tools. These are your linear feature tools for add, delete, split if you need it, and modify an attribute. And then in this modify area, these are your tools for adding area, removing area, creating new ones, deleting them, attributes. Those are the 9 things you will use. Okay. Okay, so we're going back, we're leaving lines and going back to area, so we're going to go back to open that modify area feature toolbar or toolbox. And again, I like to dock it personally. I'm going to dock it. And now, instead of our geography being voting districts, our geography is going to be this area landmark. And you will see again, once we select that, all of the area landmarks in the county show up in our info list here. And they have their MTFCC codes after them too, if you need those for any reason. So you can see we have things like cemeteries, parks, community college, looks like correctional facilities. That's the sort of things we're talking about. Hospitals are often stored as area landmarks. And let's see, what's our time? Okay, so and you're going to see we'll kind of go a little faster through this because it's the same kind of thing. So let's see, I noticed, and again, you can use these little blue arrows if you just want to kind of go through and say, okay, yeah, I know that cemetery, that's what it looks like. That boundary looks okay. and go through. Now I came to this fairgrounds. So I think I need to add a little area here because we have fairground, we have like a driveway over here. I think it's this entire area. It really is the fairgrounds. I don't know if this is true. Again, somebody knows this area. But so I guess what should I do if I want to add all of these things to this fairgrounds? What tool am I going to use?
Select my polygon.
Right. So yeah, you need to select what faces you want to add, and you can use whatever. Like I said, it's all preference. Some people like freehand, polygon. You could do one at a time if you hold down your control key. So you just have to select the faces and then what? To add area. My green plus sign, right. And if you forget, and you can hover over these and they'll tell you what you're doing here. So I just click my green plus sign and it's done. And again, if you need to split one of these faces to add part of it, you would just do the add line feature we just
So when you
showed.
select by attribute, it selects, or I mean by polygon, it selects the whole polygon if you pick any part of that polygon.
Yes.
So it's not the polygon I'm drawing.
Right.
It's what the polygon that I'm drawing is picking the polygons that are there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you have to be a little careful with your digitized.
My fairgrounds got a little bigger.
Yeah, right. Anything it intersects with of our face layer there.
Yeah.
So.
And now you have the get rid of areas, the negative sign.
Yeah. Yes, good point. So I mentioned earlier with voting districts, we couldn't remove area because they have to cover the whole county. The only way you could take area away from a voting district was by adding it to another. But with area landmarks, you can. So you'll notice we have that red minus sign is active. So I'll show you an example of that in a second here. But let's say I also looked, and fairgrounds, this has a more formal name. So I want to change the name. So I would use, again, just like with the voting precincts, I'm going to use my change attributes box here. I have that highlighted as my working, what I'm updating. And then I click that. And I think I saw somewhere on a map, it's actually called the Eastern Montana Fairgrounds. So I'll just type in my new name. It's still a fairgrounds, which we classify as park, so you don't have to update that. And then click OK. And again, you can see the name changes on the map, and it also changes over here in your info box. And save. Got to remember to save always. So it's the same tools. Okay, so let's try a remove area. All right, so in the example I picked, is it Wilbo? B-A-U-X? Weibo, okay. I'm going to remove some area from there. So again, you can double click on it. And in my fictitious example, I'm going to say, oh, you know what, the park only goes up to Weibo Park Drive. It doesn't really extend over the edge, over on the other side of the road there. So let's get rid of those two things. Same exact process. Use your selection tool to pick those two faces. This is where I was having trouble with the shading, with the highlighting. Although, I'm sorry, what was your name? Dawn. Dawn figured out how to change the highlighting. Well, I'll show you that later. But it's very hard to see. But again, when we take the action, we'll see if it really disappears or not. But the highlighting is bad here. So I'll select those two faces, and then we're going to use that red minus remove area.
But it doesn't. I was looking at, where it says feature selected, because that's what Megan was talking about, but it never said 2, it just always said 0.
Oh, I didn't see that. And you can see the faces are removed. They're still shaded differently, and that's because they're in that changes layer I was talking about. But you can see they're different, so they've been removed. And that's it. That's just how you just remove area. And I'm just going to save. Again, if you want to create a new area landmark, that works the same too. I'm just going to pick this area here. Just go anywhere on your map and we'll select some bases. Maybe this time I'll use my select by radius tool. We'll just select these spaces. For some reason, this area landmark tool, I feel like the highlighting is really bad. I don't know why that is. And in this case, notice the adding and removing are grayed out because I don't have anything selected in this info box. So it wouldn't know what to add it to, and it wouldn't know what it's supposed to be removing from. And plus the fact there's no area landmark here, so it wouldn't be able to remove from anywhere. But I can still hit my Add Entity button. And again, it just wants me to tell it the name, and I'll just name it Helena Park. And it wants me to do the TFCC code. What kind of area landmark is it? And you can see that you can add a myriad of things. Parks, there's different kinds of parks, national park versus, I'm going to say this is a county park. You can add marinas, airports, golf courses, cemeteries. You don't have to do these things, but you can. County park. And then click OK.
Do you know how if you add these, it affects the creation of the blocks? Does it take these into account?
So area landmarks, certain area landmarks are automatically block boundaries, like federal state prisons are, I think national parks are, but like city, it depends. That's my presentation tomorrow on how we how we delineate tab blocks. I talk about what goes into that. So some area landmarks will become block boundaries, so you may want them in there. Prisons is a big one right now. A lot of people want a block that's just prison population, so they have that to work with. So they may want to make sure their boundaries around their prison area landmarks are accurate. It just depends. Or if there are area landmarks with zero pop, a lot of people like that isolated into one block that has no pop in it. It's like a cemetery. They might want to make sure. Usually you don't want to, when we're looking at populations of area landmarks, you usually don't want anybody living in there unless it's a caretaker or something. Okay.
So now you know to show back up tomorrow for a whole day of census presentations.
Yeah, we'll be talking about how we create the blocks tomorrow. And then, okay, so we've added area, we removed area, we've created a new one. What's left is just to delete one. So I'm just going to say I'm going through my list of area landmarks here, and I know that where's the one I wanted to use? Pine Hills Youth Correctional Facility, again in my fictitious scenario, it's recently been closed down. That area is going to be redeveloped. So again, I just have to have it highlighted here, selected, and then you just click the red X and it'll be gone. Are you sure? Yes. It still appears there, still see the name in this case, because again, it's going to be, if I looked in that changes file, it's just going to be flagged to be deleted. But, and the reason you're still seeing it, if I go to that changes area landmark layer and turn it off, oh, it's still there. Turn my faces off. Why is it still there? Well, it's been deleted, and you can notice it's no longer in the list over here. I'm going to save again. Okay. All right, so that's basically area landmarks. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, then the last bit I'm going to show you is some of the BAS changes. You're going to find it repetitious again because we're going to add, delete, change attributes. Then I'll show you the QC, and then I think I'm going to see if Jim can go over some of the LUCA stuff. And I'll quickly show you the small differences you would see in a BAS project and a tribal BAS project. Okay, so we're using still Modify Area Feature tool, only this time our geography is going to be one of the BAS entities. Most cases you're going to be doing places, I assume. If you ever need to make a change to a county boundary, you probably need to call us, because if you're adding area, that means another county's losing it, or vice versa. So usually we have to make sure everybody's on board before we take a county change. But and I don't think minor civil divisions are a significant geography in Montana. I think it's, so we'll just go with place. Again, if I select place, it's going to give me in the list. There's only 2 incorporated places in Custer County, so there they are. And the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to say Miles City had an annexation. So let me select that, and I will double click to zoom to Miles City.
And this is Dawn's
I
city.
know, I know. Again, it's all fictitious.
Selection. She might give you the real chance.
I thought it would be good to pick a local county. Yeah, really. I should have coordinated with you. But then the danger with using a local county is everyone in the audience knows 100 times more about it than you do. So I'm going to say, sorry, I jumped ahead of here. So, Miles City is going to annex this little section up here. So let me zoom in there.
Because you still have the precincts on. Right?
Yeah. Let me. That's a good point. Let me turn those off to unclutter things, because we're not dealing with voting districts anymore. Okay. So again, with our repetition, select faces and take your action. So I'm going to use the select by polygon. Again, it's your preference. I'm going to be sloppy because I want to demonstrate our QC tools, but you don't have to be sloppy. I'm going to draw my polygon. This is a problem too that I need to take back, is the highlighting again here is not showing up. In fact, we did a webinar that when I first discovered this wasn't working, and I was freaking out a little bit because there was like 200 people on the webinar and I thought it wasn't working, but it was. I just couldn't see it. So again, it's not ideal, and we've reported this issue, but the one way you can see if it works is when you click that, let's add those faces to Miles City. And they've added, so they were selected. So I will be trying to figure that out for folks. So here's something we haven't seen before, and I'll clean up those faces in a second. We're getting this box, and it's asking us, is this a boundary correction or a legal change? So the difference is a legal change is an official, like annexation or de-annexation, where there's some kind of legal document. There's an ordinance was passed or a state law or some reason or a tribal example would be if you BIA approved some new trust land. That's legal. There's a legal document that would say that. A boundary correction is if, you know what, that was always part of Miles City. I don't know what was wrong with you, Census Bureau. You never had that before. So you're not going to have a document for that because it just is. So that's the difference. In this case, we're going to say this is an annexation, so it's legal. So I'm going to click that button. I'm not going to go into offsets and corridors. That's if you have a little like right-of-way along a road that connects 2 pieces of your city. If anyone has that situation, let me know and I can talk about that. But in the interest of time, I'm skipping that for now. So I've selected legal change. Click OK. And now I'm kind of back to that box where it wants just a little more information. In this case, for a legal change, it's going to want to know, well, when was this annexation effective? And you can type in the date, or you have a little calendar here. I'm just going to say, you can pick whatever date you want, but I'll say the end of last year, December 29th. It's going to want the authority type. Was it a law, an ordinance, resolution, state action? I'm going to say it's an ordinance. If you have the document number, if you know the ordinance number, you can type that in. It helps us a lot because we have to verify it, but if you just don't, it's okay. We'll do the research. So I'll just say it was MT348, whatever. If you have a PDF copy of it, you can also attach it using this button here. But again, you don't have to. You can browse to it on your computer and attach it. And it'll just attach it with the submission file later. You do not have to do that. It's optional. And then for the change type, you'll just want to say it is an annexation. and click OK. The same thing of just using an add area tool. You would just select those pieces. Oh. And use my green button to add them. I'm just going to say correction now because I'm correcting my mistake. And there we go. They're there. Okay. So that's annexation. Now I'm going to move to, is it Ismay? Is that how you pronounce it? Ismay? Okay. I'm going to move to Ismay Town. I need to do a little work over there.
No, I only do this.
Do whatever you want then.
Yeah. And again, I'm making all this up. I have decided, or I have learned that, I wanted to show you more typical boundary correction example. And I'm going to zoom in up here on this northern boundary, and I'm going to try this imagery button again. See if it works. Okay, so you know what, that boundary looks pretty good, but it was probably digitized before we had imagery, and theirs isn't a very well-developed area, so it's kind of hard. Somebody drew it in with a map source, and it wasn't, you know, we have a lot of data that was drawn in 30 years ago before we had imagery, so we have a lot of stuff, especially if it's in the middle of a forest or somewhere. Person drew it best they could. But I happen to know this little water body here is part of the town, so I want to fix this. This needs a correction. So I need to add a new line in here because I don't have an existing one. So I'm going to go back to my add line tool. And I think it starts up around here. Maybe I have my own shapefile that I could have brought in as a reference. And I'm just going to draw my line where that boundary should be, the corrected line. And this part's okay. It just wasn't quite going as far to the north as it should have. And I'll finish that. Again, this is just the boundary of a place. It's obviously, there's no visible feature following it, so it's going to be one of those P001s and with no name. And I'll click OK. And now that it's there, I can go back to modify area. So you have to do both. You have to draw in that new boundary line, and then you actually have to also add in that new area. And so I'm going to go back to my modify area feature tool. I'm going to select that face, which again, I don't know why it's not highlighting right. I'm actually going to turn off the imagery too. That might help. There it is. And use my add area button to add that. In this case, this is a more typical kind of correction that we get. It's usually we haven't missed entire chunks in the middle of the city. This is more, it's just spatially inaccurate. And it was important because we know there's going to be new development there, say. So I will just say correction, and then I didn't get that box. I don't have to enter all that information about when it was effective in ordinance because it's moot. This is just a correction. So that's the difference between correction and legal. If you have a change and you have no idea what the ordinance was or the document or anything, you can just submit it as a boundary correction because it'll make you fill in that stuff if you say legal. So if you get in that situation, you just don't have the information, you can submit it as boundary correction.
But the BAS folks still have to verify that it was done. So if you're the one in charge of all those records, they're still going to contact you to get a copy of that data. Because we've had some people that are like, there's a little parcel here and there over the last 10 years and I don't have them. Can I just do that? They submit them, but somebody has to
say okay.
Yeah. So you're right. It's going to come now or later.
It'll come back to you probably.
I remember I tell this story a lot. Before I did redistricting, I worked in geography for about 10 years, and I had to verify a change, and I remember it just came in the BAS. It was a boundary correction, and they gave us actually the effective date, and it was 1894. It was like it's been wrong for 100 years, and no one noticed. No one ever looked. Because we do say that with BAS too. A lot of people are like, well, we haven't had any annexations. I'm not even going to look at the shapefile or the map. and they don't realize that it was originally wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's been wrong forever. Because again, some of this stuff went in the mid 80s and people were doing the best they can with like quad maps and stuff like that. All right, so, okay, so we did a boundary change, a legal change, an annexation. I can show you quickly. Let's go back. I'm going to zoom back out to ISME and say, let's say they removed, de-annexed. So you can do it the other way, and that can also, removing area could also be a legal de-annexation or a boundary change. De-annexations don't happen often, but they do. So I'm just going to say this area south of this N1 is, I think that might be a prison because there's a road here called Jailhouse Drive. Let's say they wanted to de-annex that area. Same process. We're going to select our faces and click that minus, remove area button. Let's say I accidentally pick legal change. So I just said if you're really in a bind and you don't have the documents, and then I realize, oh shoot, I don't know the date, I don't know what it was, I don't have a document number, and I say I don't, or maybe I know some things. I know the date was, you know, April 2nd, whatever, and then I click OK. It's gonna make me do this, and I'm getting annoyed with it, right? I'm like, I don't want to do it. If you click cancel, actually, let me try that again. So I want to remove this area. Oh, okay. It did the change, I think. Let me see what it did here. Yeah, if I turn off that changes layer, it removed the area, it automatically will just give it back to us as if it's a correction. So we'll come back to you, but it does make the change. So if you get that far into that box and you realize this was a mistake, that's okay. All right, and then the last thing we might do is we might, is anyone here from ISME? Because I'm about to disincorporate you. No offense. So if you do need to completely delete a place, and again, all you need to do is make sure it's highlighted here and click your red X or your white X in the red box, and you delete. You sure you want to do that? Yep. And that's as easy as that.
It doesn't ask you for documentation.
It does not.
Anything like that. Oh, okay.
It does not, because that's pretty rare, and we'll definitely be verifying that. Oh, really? Okay. Because if we don't confirm it, we will be hearing.
Yeah.
Who's? You will have to. Oh, okay. Because if we screw that up and don't verify it, we will be hearing from the mayor of ISME. So we make sure those are right. Okay, so that's all of the main changes you can do. Does anybody have any questions on that? In any of those? You can see how it's repetitious. It's the same process for no matter what kind of geography you're doing pretty much. Select your faces and then tell it what you want to do. Add or remove or create a new one.
Did you show me a new button?
There is an undo button. The trick with that, I don't know if I've done too much already. So say, I wonder if I get that back. I did not want to remove that. There is an edit. Is that what you're talking about, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I think I went too far. The trick with that is you have to make sure you have the right layer selected. Right, okay. So sometimes when you make a change, this table of contents will jump because it's changing on this faces layer that you probably don't even notice in the course of your work. So sometimes you make a change and it jumps off of that, even though you feel like, well, I was working on it in place. So you do have to make sure that if I want to undo this change I just made to a place, I do have to make sure I've clicked on the place layer and highlighted it. And then you can go to Edit, Undo, and it'll put it back. It should. Oops.
You did the undo delete one though, right?
Or did I do something else in between that it undid?
Yeah, because you deleted it.
Oh,
The
okay.
whole thing, so it put it back. So now can you do it again and it'll go to the next? But you don't have
Oh, I have to go
places.
place, right? Yes, thank you.
There you go.
So now I undid it. All right, so once you've done all your work, then you want to submit it, right? So we have the big one you'll probably want is this export to zip, this yellow folder with the zipper on it. But before we do that, we want to do our QC tools. And if you try to do this, it will tell you you need to do your QC beforehand. So you're going to have to do it one way or the other. Some of these I'm not going to show you because they're related to that block boundary suggestion project that we've already is already over. So some of these buttons that say BBSP about it, I'm not going to show you because they're related to that. But we'll start with this one, this little box with the dotted line through the middle and the green check mark. That's the geography review tool. Whoops, I didn't want to dot that, but you could. This you can basically review all your changes by layer. This is not required, it's an optional one. But you can see if I pull down the layer list, it's all the layers that are in my table of contents. What I might want to do is just kind of look at these ones with changes, right? So let's look at the changes one. And you can see this is just going to show me, I picked area landmark changes. It's going to show me the 3 area landmarks that we changed. And you can just look and see what was the change type. Oh, we made a boundary correction, or we created a new district. And then the in-out tells you it was a boundary correction where we moved area in, or we moved area out and we removed it. And if you click on these, double click on them, it'll zoom you to them. So you can, if you just want to do a review, you can go through your lists and click on these and make sure these are what you meant to do. And you can do that with all your layers that you had changes with. So that can be handy just for your own review. Review change polygons. This is the one that will be required, I think, by most programs. I know it's required for redistricting. I'm going to close this modify area tool to make a little more room here. This is checking for any missed spaces or little holes you may have had by accident. It may be legit, but it's basically, they're things that we find when people have submitted files that were usually mistakes. So we just made a check for them so people can review them. So you'll want to go through, you'll notice this is the same list of geographies that we have in the modify area tool. And if you click on them, actually I'll show you, like if you click on MCD, there's nothing here because we didn't make any changes to MCDs, nor do any exist in this. But let's go through the layers that we did look at. So we have area landmark hydrography. There's 2 checks within this. Small area check. This rarely fails. This would be, usually would happen if you, say you deleted an area landmark, but you missed one tiny face that was less than 500 square feet. We're going to assume that you weren't just removing area and wanted to keep that one little face as a park, that it was a mistake. But that's a really small face, so I've tried to create that error, and I, just for demonstration purposes, and it's hard. So you usually have no problem there. This one is more common, find holes. So I have no holes in my area landmarks, that's good. So we're good with area landmarks, our QC checks. The other layer we worked on was place. So we made changes. You can see the changes we made. We had an annexation of Miles City, we corrected a boundary, Miles City, and we corrected a boundary in Ismay. Small area, good. Didn't find any. Find holes. I should have a few here, I think. Right. These are my mistakes I made. So down here, you can see the results come back. It found 2 areas where we have holes. I'll click on the first one. It'll zoom me in. And you can see this is a little hole. So let me see what's happening. I'm going to turn my changes on, because sometimes that can, let me put my place boundary back on. And if you need to, like I do here, I need to zoom out and see what I'm looking at. Okay. So you can see this is all part of Miles City, but this little guy here is missed. So he's not part of Miles City, completely surrounded by the rest of Miles City. So he's a hole in Miles City. So let me zoom back in now that I know what's going on. And I want to assign him to Miles City, this space. So because it's a hole, that means it's completely surrounded by some other entity that we believe you probably meant to include it in. I actually don't have to pull out my modify area tool and select the face and click the green plus sign to add. I can just click fix and it'll do it for me. And you can see the error went away. And it's a water body too. That's the other reason why it's not, the shading's a little different. I was wondering why that for a second. It's a lake on the edge there. So, and now I'm down to one error. So let's see what's happening here. Same thing. This is the area we added. This is existing Miles City, and this little face got left out. So I just want to click fix, and he disappeared, and he's there too. So if you want to double check, you can zoom out again. And again, this is this changes layer, ink place layer. If I turn that off, it should be more clear that all that's in there. And that's just blue because of the water. So that fixed our holes. I'm going to close that. So we did the geography review, the review that changed polygons. This is a VBSP related tool, so I won't bother that. And then we have the VTD criteria review, which if you work on VTDs, you might want to run. Did we say if anyone here was actually submitting VTDs and GUPS?
I'm going to be doing that.
Do you want to see this? Or?
Sure.
Okay. Quickly. Okay. So I'll run that. We have to save the project. This is somewhat similar to like the holes check a little bit. I did create areas. It's telling me if there's any area in the county that's not assigned to a VTD. Remember we left that one face out. So if, again, all I have to do is click on it and it'll take me there, and I may need to get my bearings. What's happening here? Oh yeah, that whole face should be part of precinct 16. Let me click fix. And in this case, your modify area feature box does come up, and you will have to go through that. Let me select that face. Oh, I need to select precinct 16 first. Let me select that face and add the area. And there, it's fixed. Great. It doesn't disappear like the other one, but you can hit refresh and it will disappear. But I'm going to go through the whole, all the errors first. And then the other type of error it tells you is when you have a non-contiguous entity. So we have a VTD that's in more than one part. And sometimes that can be a missed face. I can see here when I was making some kind of change here, I was adding area from one VT to another, but I forgot this little piece. When I was making my selections, this little face didn't get selected. So I want to fix that. I want to make sure this is part of this neighbor precinct. So I'll fix that. In this case, I can't even read that. I'm not sure what this purple one is. So here's a good opportunity to use this select target area instead of selecting it from the list. And then I want to select that face and add it. Fixed. And then this one has a non-contiguous. Sometimes these things are legit, and you can use this ignore defined. I don't know why this is like so scrunched, or why I can't size this box. It may be that it's legitimately a discontiguous voting district. It really does have two pieces, so you can just check that box, and that's all you have to do. And then let's refresh. It's telling me I updated one thing. It's going to rerun the tool, and now it says everything passes. because I addressed all those areas. I either said, nope, that's fine as it is, or actually fixed it. So those are the QC tools. Anybody have any questions about that? And then the last thing you have to do then is you would just select this export to zip. You have two options here. You export for census. It's going to create a zip file of all the layers that we need, and it'll just put that for you where you want it to, somewhere on your drive, and then you can submit it. We also have the share with another participant. That'll zip up the entire project into a zip file that you could, maybe you could email it to someone, or you could put it on a server, and another person could open GUPS, and they would use in their map management, if you remember this from the beginning, there's this import project zip file. They could use that button, and it would open up the project with all your changes. So if you've made changes and you need somebody to check your work, or you're collaborating, this share with another participant's a good tool.
So if you're working with like Bass and you want Megan to double check your work, you could zip it up like that, give it to her, and she would say, yeah, looks wonderful. Or if I'm working like on voting precincts, and maybe you do all the work in GUPS and you give those to me, and then I would submit them as part of the state. It's very helpful.
Yeah, because all that we really get are those change files with just all those little polygon, random change polygons everywhere. So if you sent that to someone else, but we import that into our whole database, and we get that context that way. But if you're just sharing a file with a colleague, they're going to have no context for that. So let's just pick export for census. It's just this is where it would tell you if you haven't run your quality control checks, but we did. It does tell you when you ran them. It never hurts to do that find hold check. You can run those anytime in the middle of your work. If you finish one entity and you just want to make sure it's clean, you can run them repeatedly. As long as you run them once, it'll let you submit, but it does tell you when the last time you ran them in case you might want to just run them one more time. And then continue. And then it just tells you it created the file. It tells you where it put it. Created this GUPS data folder when you install GUPS. You know where it is. If you want to go open it, you can open it right up. And then there's instructions. I won't show you, but there's instructions in if you submit it directly to the census. In here, there's a web page. We have what we call our Secure Web Incoming Module, or SWIM. And you just go to that URL. You'll need an account. And we have to give you a token. So if it's your first time doing it, you just have to let us know, and we'll give you a token so you can register. It's just a number that you input to register. And it's really easy to use. You just click the button that says you want to submit a file. There's a radio buttons for what program, like if it's a BAS file or a redistricting data program, and you tell it what program, and then you just click upload, loads it up, and submit it, and it comes into us. And this is the file that you would submit with this return. I think if you did share with another participant, it has that same file name, but it says data dictionary instead of return. All right. Does anybody have any questions about that? And then I was just going to quickly show the 2 or 3 differences with the BAS module, and then Jim, if you want to do LUCA after that. Okay. All right, so this will just take a couple minutes. So we're finished with this. Let's go. Now I've done my voting precinct work. Now I have to do my BAS work. So again, you would just want to click on here to get your map management box up. This time we want to select Boundary and Annexation Survey. It says subprogram, but there's only one, Boundary and Annexation Survey. Select your state. You don't have to do this with me if you don't want to, and it might be better because it might take a while for the data to load. And I think we might want to do that when Jim does LUCA, so let's maybe hold off. Because again, I already have this data saved. So we're select your state, county. One thing you'll notice is you'll select your working county, but there's this other entity type. So usually a BAS respondents, we do have state level ones and county level respondents who will reply for all the places in their county, for example. But often it is just like each place responding for themselves. So you would want to select what thing you're updating if it's not multiple things. Places, and then you would select, and it does give you the name of every place in the state even though you've selected a county, and I think it's designed like this because we do have places that cross counties, but you should know what place you're trying to do. So I'm actually not going to do this, and it would work the same way. You would get that next box would want you to open the data, and you'd have to decide if you want to download it from Census Web or the DVD like we did at the beginning of this. I'm actually, again, this is like a cooking show. I've already had it baking in the oven, so I'm just going to open it this way because it'll be faster. And really, I just want to show you that a couple buttons look a little bit different in BAS. Uh-oh, I think it got mad at me.
So this is the same software. You're just picking the different program within the software.
Right. So it's the same software. The only thing it's written that different layers might display in different orders because obviously you might not care about voting districts if you're doing tribal BAS. So those layers may not appear. And you'll notice, so I'm in this BAS module now because you can see it says BAS up here. It looks exactly the same pretty much, right? You have your add lines, your delete lines, your split line. So that's what I meant when I said it's all the same tools. You have the modify area feature box. It has the same drop-down choices. The one thing, this does have point landmarks. If you want to add a point landmark, that's pretty rare, and you're certainly welcome to, but because we're the Census Bureau and we're counting people within buckets, we don't really do anything with point landmarks, but you can add them if you want. Sometimes they're a nice reference. It's the same export functions. The one thing I did want to show that's different with BAS though is when you do your export to give us the file, export for census, you will get this. This is really the main difference between the two modules. And you will have to give us your information, and because like Leslie said, if we have questions, we're going to need to come back, and we need to make sure for legal changes we have authoritative sources. We don't just take, Joe Schmo can't come in and say, oh, ISME had a big annexation. We need to make sure it's an authoritative source that we know. So that's why they want to collect all that information. And that's really the only difference with BAS.
And it doesn't have the same checks, like it doesn't have...
Right, it has the geography review one we did, and it has that small area, the one with the holes in the small area. It doesn't have all the BBSP ones or the VTD criteria one that we had that look for the discontiguous, because the thing with the voting district modules includes all the BAS tools plus the voting district, but the BAS one just has the BAS tool. So I just wanted to show you that in case people were worried about, wait a minute, you're showing me the voting district module and I work on BAS. You're going to see it's exactly the same. And then the last one I just want to show is the tribal BAS. So again, you don't have to follow along or just... Why won't map management come up? It gets mad at me because I start clicking too much. I get impatient with it. All right, there we go. Again, I already saved a tribal BAS project, so let me just open that. But it would be, actually, I should show. If you want to switch to that on program, instead of Boundary and Annexation Survey, you would select Tribal Boundary and Annexation Survey. There's not, again, just like BAS, there's not, the sub-program's the same. And then for entity type, we have our legal tribal areas, which are Alaska Native Regional Corporation, which is this Alaska Hawaiian homelands, which are just white, and then we have the reservation trust lands in the lower 48. So you would select that and then the entity name, and we have a list of all of our reservations in the country. So you would want to select black feed in here. There we go. And then you would just click open and then you download your data. But I've already done that, so I'm just going to go to my open recent so you can see what it would look like. I don't need to save that. Oh, and because I was working around in here. And you can see there's a lot fewer layers that are shown here because they're not as relevant. Because reservations across counties, we have a couple counties that display here. The big difference that, well, before I say that, you can see it's the same tools. If you need to add linear features, delete them, this looks very similar. The same modify area feature tool, but it's different kinds of areas that we're modifying. So instead of that landmark, county, MCD, place, we can still do landmarks, but we've been replaced with reservation trust land and tribal subdivisions. So there's two different kinds of legal we do separate the reservation area from the off-reservation trust land. There might be trust land on reservation, but we just count that as reservation. And you can modify both of these. The one thing I don't think you can do, so let's just say we need to do a correction. The river is the actual reservation boundary, so there's a little error here. And it would work the exact same way. Where are my selection tools? Oh, this is a little thing that throws me. For some reason, in this module, instead of that being yellow for the selection, they make it blue, and they just make it look a little different, the icon. But it is a select tool. So I would just select that face.
And I put it in a different place.
It doesn't have that target area tool. It's just because it's not needed for tribal paths. So it looks, the problem is that tool was blue too, so it's a little, it throws you a little bit. Anyway, I select the face and I want to add that to the reservation. It's a boundary correction. Okay, now here's the difference I wanted to show you. We also have the tribal tracts and block groups. So it will, when you're adding new area, it wants you to tell it which tribal tract. I also have to add it to a tribal tract or block group. So you will get this little note. And since I'm adding it and this tribal tract is 200, I'm probably going to want to add it to that same one. That's the one that everything around it is. So I'll select that from the drop down. There's lots of letters and numbers. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually just asking you for the tribal block group. So you have your tracts and your block groups nest within your tracts. So if you tell it what block group, it's going to know what tract. So it's actually acting for the block group, which is this 200A layer. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I misspoke. So that's the only other difference. When you're adding area to reservation or trust land, you will get that message saying, okay, I understand that, but which of the subdivided tribal tracts or block groups do you want to add it to? So I'll select that one and say okay, and it's added. So, and it would work the same for removing area, except it will remove it from both the tribal tract, tribal block group, and the reservation if you had to make a correction there. And it would work the same if you're working with off-reservation trust land. The only thing I think it won't let you do, and I'll try it now, if I select these two faces and said I want to add that to, or create a new reservation, it won't let you do that.
You can't just create a new reservation.
I think create new entity, yes, you can't create new ones. And all off-reservation trust land is kind of one unit. So if you already have off-reservation, because that can happen. You may get new trust land, but you would just add it to the existing trust land. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Yeah, and there's, you saw in that video, there's all kinds of help contact numbers, and I have them in the slides that I can send to everybody too, so it'll be all that.
And then the humongous book that she showed, or user's guide, now that you've gone through this, it'll be easy to look at the pictures and know what to do. It's really nicely done. You might not want to print it out because it's all color.
I know, I only print it out because I use it a lot, but yeah. And you can search. You just need the PDF. Just search on stuff.
Well, let's jump right in. My name is Jim Castaneri. I'm a geographer out of the Denver Regional Office of the Census Bureau. I'm going to take a few minutes this morning just to talk about another module of the GUPS software. And I've only been here for an hour or so watching all that you've been through, but you've been through a lot already. So you know a lot of the functionality of the software. I want to spend a little bit of time explaining what the whole notion is behind the GUPS LUCA module, and it's going to be very similar to what you've heard already. LUCA, of course, is an acronym for the Local Update of Census Addresses. It's a program that we're in the middle of right now. Most governments have until around the 1st of July to finish the submission of their updates to our address list. So what is LUCA? It's really the opportunity for local governments to review the list of addresses that the Census Bureau has for your jurisdiction. So this program was offered to governments only, not to private sector or business. We were required by the Constitution to offer the participation of this program to all governments. It's an optional participation. You don't have to participate, but we encourage governments to have the resources to participate in LUCA because it gives you that opportunity before the census to decide how good our address list is. And to step back a minute on that subject, the concern there is, of course, that we have good addresses. Why? Because we use addresses to facilitate the census process itself. Before 1970, the Census Bureau went door to door. Every place across the country, we knocked on the door, said, hello, we're here to take the census. Things like address lists came along, and the Census Bureau realized that we could do a much more efficient job at taking the census by mailing out a questionnaire. In doing that, it required that we have a good address to mail to. And not only a good address, but we'd have to know where that address was on the ground, because Tiger, everybody knows what Tiger is, we now call it Math Tiger, Master Address File, and Tiger itself is an acronym. I won't say the words, but it's an acronym. It's our system that manages a series, a large number of addresses, millions of addresses, and the geography for where those addresses belong. So you've been seeing GUPS with maps. Most of the data that you've seen, if not all of it, gets its information from our Math Tiger system. The addresses that we talk about in the Local Update of Census Addresses program come from our master address file, and they describe the addresses that we know about for your jurisdiction. So the whole idea behind the LUCA program is that you use our framework, our geographic framework, Tiger, and our list of addresses to decide whether or not we've got good information to do a mail-based census in your area. Now, what if not all of the addresses in your jurisdiction are mailable? That's part of our challenge. And we, as geographers, we decide ultimately whether or not we can use the mail to conduct the census throughout the country. And part of that comes from a product from the Postal Service called the Delivery Sequence File. We had an agreement that authorized the LUCA program back in 1994 called the Address List Improvement Act. It's now part of the Constitution that says the Census Bureau must offer this program to every government, but it also required that the post office share its delivery sequence file with the Census Bureau. And that's really good because twice a year they give us all of their deliverable addresses. So our challenge in the census to do an efficient census process is to get a questionnaire in some form to every deliverable address in the country. because that we've discovered over the decades is the most efficient way to get an accurate census. So this is what this is all about, getting a questionnaire to a household. When we take a census, we're not worried about John Doe per se. We're worried about that address out there, 101 Main Street. We just want to make sure we get a questionnaire there, and what comes back is the concern of our enumerators. Did we get a complete answer, or all the questions filled out, that kind of thing. Just for your information, for 2020, the way it's going to roll this time is we're going to mail an ID card to every address that we think is mailable. And on that ID card, it'll have a special code and will say, hello, please answer the census for 2020. Census day is April 1st. And the way you can do that is you can go online and type in this code and answer the census right then and there. Or you can call this 1-800 number and we will take your census over the phone. Or if you don't like any of those options and you delay a little bit too long, we'll send a questionnaire to that address that got that postcard, and it'll actually be a paper thing that you can fill out. If you still don't answer after that, we have a program called the non-response follow-up, where we go to that address and say, hey, no one's responded from this address for 6 weeks, and now we really want to find out if someone lives here. So we do visit eventually if we get nothing back. So the address list that we talk about is our control for the census process for most governments. Now, let me clarify something else before we move on, because it is important. For those addresses that are deliverable by the post office, they have to come to a city-style address. P.O. Box won't work, rural route won't work, because we have to geocode them. We have to be able to geocode that address. Have you ever tried to geocode a P.O. Box or a rural route? Geocoding systems that have been developed over the years don't ingest that kind of information. They're designed with 101 Main Street. And because geocoding is this now universal tool, you see that in E911. All across the country, counties are converting to 911 addresses because you can call on the phone, you can be in the middle of nowhere and have a city-style address, call 911, and they know where you are with enhanced 911, they already know that, or you could tell them, I'm at whatever street, and emergency vehicles will get there because of the ability to geocode that address using what's now become a standard geocoding process based on 101 Main Street, Anytown, USA. If you have a rural route address, rural delivery appeal box, geocoding systems to this day don't know how to work with that. So what Census does, part of my job as a geographer, is differentiate those addresses in this country into those that we can mail to and those that we cannot. Part of this LUCA program is an opportunity for local governments to look at those addresses we can mail to and the ones we cannot mail to. We send you, as part of LUCA, every address we have inside your jurisdiction. And how do we decide that? We geocode them. Now we can geocode addresses that are city style using the machine, addresses that are rural delivery, those kinds of addresses that don't have a standard city style address. They've been geocoded by our staff manually, either from the 2010 census or from past field activities. So we know where they are, at least we think we do, and they're in the address list. So you're going to get two types of address from us in this LUCA program. You're going to get a city-style type of address, and you're going to get a non-city-style type of address, unless your government has all of one kind or the other, in which case you won't get both kinds. You'll get one type. But in Montana, most of the time you're going to get a mixture of those addresses. In Helena, if you're with the city of Helena and we send you a LUCA package, your addresses are all mostly going to be city-style. Now, the thing about city-style addresses that make this LUCA program a little bit more challenging is that they have been determined to be covered under Title 13 of the U.S. Code. They're confidential. And as geographers, we've debated this over the decades about, boy, that seems kind of silly. It's not even a person's name. It's just an address on the ground. What's with this Title 13 issue? The Supreme Court actually ruled on it a number of years ago. Colleen, you might remember when it was, but it's been some time ago, that they decided an address is considered confidential, even though there's no name associated with it, even though I can go online and look up my address on the internet and see how much I paid for my house and see my name up there. The minute the Census Bureau is in possession of an address within our computer systems, it's protected under the confidentiality law of Title 13. That is why when a government signs up for LUCA, we have to have them all sign the confidentiality agreement. And this is different for 2020. We had other flavors of LUCA before this decade that allowed you to participate without having to do the Title 13. And for a variety of reasons, we discovered that those other flavors weren't very helpful, and there were a lot of work for everybody involved. So for 2020, the process is a Title 13 process only. It means that when we send you addresses, they come from the Census Bureau, and they're protected, which means whoever's going to look at it has to have signed that confidentiality agreement. So whoever is working on the LUCA program needs to have signed it personally. If you haven't done it yet, please do. We can add you to it. If you want to add people, so you've got a list that you want someone to look at, before anyone else looks at it, make sure they've signed that agreement. We can send you another blank form. I can tell you where to get it. You can add whoever you want to the list. Just as long as by signing that agreement, they agree not to disclose those addresses to anyone who has not signed the agreement. And when you do sign that agreement, you are authorized to review only those addresses for your jurisdiction. So if you sign up for LUCA and you sign up to be a reviewer for the city of Helena, you're not allowed to see Livingston's addresses, only Helena's addresses. That's how it works. So when we send you the materials, and the materials are all out by now, it's taken us a little bit of time to do that. We've sent, depending on the size of the jurisdiction, some governments got paper maps, very small ones. Some received shape files on a DVD and an address list on a DVD. And everybody who did digital received the GUPS software, which you're going to see on the screen here. Not everybody wanted it, but we made it available. And as you've already learned watching Colleen, it's based on QGIS, Quantum GIS, the old Quantum GIS. It's been around quite a long time. It's open source. It's very programmable. The contractor that built all of these tools you've been looking at has done a pretty amazing job of extending QGIS into this tool we call GUPS. So GUPS has all of these modules. The very first one that came out was BAS, the Boundary and Annexation Survey. And there have been a couple more. I don't know which all you demonstrated today. Okay. So the voter districts, a little bit of tribal BAS discussion. The module that we're here to talk about for the rest of the morning, and not too much longer, is the local update of census addresses. So a disk went out. It's a different version of GUPS than most of the other ones. Most of the functionalities as we move forward and produce new versions are backward compatible. So if you are using an old version of GUPS to do BAS, because that was the first iteration, chances are it's not going to work right for LUCA. So you need to be using your most recent version of GUPS for this program. When you run GUPS for the first time, it's going to pop open with this map management box if it's been installed correctly, and most of the problems we run into up to now are the actual installation process. Normally what you would do first is have your data disk that you have to unlock with a password because it contains Title 13 addresses. You copy it on there or you put it in your drive and you click import project zip file. Now, I'm not going to do this because I don't have one of these import files that we can't show you in this environment actual Title 13 addresses. It would be a violation of Title 13. So everything I'm going to show you is dummy data created specifically for these types of discussions. So I'm not going to actually open a real zip file that contains actual data. I'm going to open some dummy data that represents the best of the LUCA scenarios. So it does, again, not being here from the very beginning this morning, it does take some time, the very first point which you use the tool, to actually extract the shape files from the shapefile disk. And then there's that separate disk that has the addresses on it. This is unique to the LUCA program. So you probably get shape files for the various other programs for BAS and VDD, BTD. For LUCA, you get a address list disk wrapped separately. You get a shapefile disk with all of the boundaries and features and roads, and then you get a GUPS disk. Some governments will choose to use commercial GIS to do this processing, and that's fine. The discussion today is specifically, what does GUPS give you in terms of a tool to do LUCA? So, and I'm not going to show you a lot of functionality. I'll show you some neat things here. The key takeaway from GUPS is that it facilitates the LUCA process probably a lot easier than a commercial GIS is going to do. Because ultimately what you're trying to do, like with so many of our programs, is update information and get it back to the Census Bureau. For LUCA, we can boil it down to two very simple things. We are asking you to review our address list and update our address list. In the past, you could throw an address list at us and say, here's our address list, help us, let us participate, take our address list and run with it. This time around, this process, this program rather, is all about reviewing the Census Bureau's address list and correcting it and making additions to it where necessary. You can also, as Colleen has demonstrated in a lot of different flavors, add features to the geography, to the line work, to the road network. It's not nearly as important as the addresses are, and I could go into detail about why. The addresses, again, are the primary focus of the LUCA program, the local update of census addresses. So all of the functionality of GUPS, of QGIS is still in GUPS. You can do all of the things that QGIS lets you do. Edit and label and thematically map. But as you've already discovered, the tool is set up to make that as easy as possible. It's prepackaged for you, and after you load your software, the screen looks like this. Now, this geography is going to be different from what you would load if it's yours, but you'll notice, like as before, some of the other programs, you have a map window area, kind of in the center left there. On the right, you have what's called the address count list. So there are really the three windows here that are of importance for the program. The map area, obviously. On the right side, the address count list, which tells you how many addresses we believe there are by census block, 2010 census block. So it's a tally, a count. The actual address list is down here on the bottom. Right now, I'm showing you the census address list, and it comes out of the box. When you install the software, it's going to load our address list. So this, if it weren't dummy data, this list would be considered Title 13 information. And so when you're using the software and you're working with it, the idea is that prying eyes aren't poking around with it. Only you are using it. Because this part of the census address list, you see this tab right here, this is that list that's covered and protected by Title 13. There is also a tab here, and in my case is already populated, for the user's address list. This is that option for a local government to co-load your address list with our address list. It allows you to do a side-by-side comparison. And I didn't really finish my statement from a few minutes ago. Ultimately, what your goal here is to update the Census Bureau's address list and send back to us, similar to what Colleen has explained before, only those addresses that need to be changed or added. Or deleted. I should add the delete. You don't actually delete. As with everything we do in this tool, you mark them for deletion. Whether it's a feature or an address, you actually tag it for deletion. Why do we do it that way? Because if you actually deleted it from the file and tried to send it back to us, we'd get nothing. We wouldn't know to do anything. We have to know to take action on something by its action code, which is right here in the address list, this column. I was trying to highlight the column. Let's see if I can do that yet. Maybe I won't be able to. You can see it, the second column from the left there after map ID, this action code column. This is that field that tags each record in our address list as to what needs to happen to it for us to make a proper change. If an address on the list, on our list, is perfect, don't touch it, don't change it, don't need to do anything. When you're done, it won't even come back to us because it's good. But if it needs to be changed, you can edit it, and then that individual record will be assigned one of 4 codes. And we can talk about that. It's basically, does it need to be changed? Otherwise it gets a C. Does it need to be deleted? It gets a D. Is it a non-residential address? In other words, is this a business? It gets an N. If it's not in your jurisdiction, if it's not in your city, it gets J. And if it's new, it gets an A. So those 4 codes are added. So when you send the address list back to us, all you're sending back are those records that have one of those 4 codes in them. That's it. And we won't complain if you don't send the map back. You can, but you don't need to. If there are lots of updates to the streets that need to be made, the same situation applies. You add the features, and in the attribute table of the feature file, it's got a slightly different series of action codes, but the software will take care of packaging up only those records that have changed. So when you send back the data for us, when you say you're done, we get 2 files for LUCA, the address list and the feature list. And it only contains changes, and that's it. So it can be quite small. Any questions at this point? Yes? Where to start, huh?
Clarify for me, please, post office boxes. We have lots and lots and lots of post office boxes in different counties. If the name isn't associated with it, how am I supposed to geocode that post office box?
So if you have P.O. boxes and you know where it is,
I know where the box is.
or if you know where the household that the box belongs to, let me rephrase this. P.O. boxes aren't helpful to us in most cases. If it has a location description to it, let's say rural route box 1, and you have some information about it as being a trailer, for example, or a ranch house, and you know physically where that unit is, you can add it as part of LUCA. We won't try to mail to it. What we will do is try to visit that location. P.O. boxes are not in the mailable census universe. We've been trying to use them for decades and they just don't work very well. So we have other accommodations for those types of addresses. We have outreach, promotional outreach that says answer the census, and those who only have a P.O. box and nothing else, they only go to the post office to pick up their mail, they don't have a 911 address, nothing, then we do one of 2 things. We hope that they answer the census themselves as a self-response, and we hope that we find them during our address canvassing or our field operations. So we have a pretty darn good idea where there are lots of non-city style addresses. Where those P.O. boxes exist, we kind of know where they are because the post office sends us that information, at least generally speaking. If we can't figure out where it goes, very specifically, we assign that area to a different type of census process called update leave, where we go door to door. So if we're not confident that a large percentage of the addresses in a given area, census block to be specific, if we're not confident that they're deliverable, we will do the census and that block using the traditional door-to-door method. That's how we pick up non-city style addresses.
Do you at that point geocode them?
We manually geocode them, yes.
So during LUCA, will he add those points for where he knows the houses are if he doesn't know where they connect to P.O. boxes?
If you have a description of a house that's not a city style address, you can add it in LUCA if you've got a coordinate you can give us. And then we will go find that household. If all you have is a P.O. box and no location information for us, we won't accept that in LUCA. It won't help us.
I understand that.
Okay.
I realize why, but what's confusing me is after I've done all my address in Beaverhead County, every single structure in Beaverhead County has a street-style address, although lots of them have only post office box deliverable. The post office tells me there is no way for them to tie a post office box to a physical address. It seems to me like when you come in to get a post office box, it should say, what is your physical address? Because what's happening is there's a lot of people out there that aren't getting UPS or FedEx because they don't have, all they have is a post office box.
Right.
They have a 911 address.
Right.
But it's not in anybody's, it's other than our database, you know, with our server. I don't know, it's frustrating.
It's frustrating for local officials, it's frustrating for us, but another challenge with those types of addresses, P.O. boxes specifically, is that P.O. Box 100 is great for Joe Smith. He moves away and has to give up his P.O. box. The Postal Service reissues P.O. Box 100 to Jane Doe the next month, and it could be across town. So some post offices do track that relationship between P.O. Box and actual city-style addresses. Many don't.
Ours don't.
Mhm.
So because we're running out of time, I want to jump into a couple of very quick things here. The software will allow you to import your local address list. As long as it's in a comma-separated values form, let's pretend this sheet here doesn't exist. I can click import and navigate to the location of my text file and find my CSV or text file. It's looking for either type. And what it's doing right here is it's creating what some people call a crosswalk between a set of fields that we can work with and what you've defined in your address list. So basically it's saying, what do you call the address for the structure number for in your address list? We call it house number, and this is the little local data into GUPS, and allows you to compare one address list to the other. The beauty of this process is then it will map both addresses on GUPS. It will put them in there and say, here are all of the addresses that we know about, and here are all of your addresses. And one of the cool things here is that it will show you the differences. These blue triangles are addresses that the local government has that the Census Bureau does not. The blue dots are addresses that we have. And right away, you can see there are a whole bunch of addresses right here as triangles that we do not have at the Census Bureau. I'm going to select them. No. There we go. I'm going to select them, and guess what? I can click this button and add them to the Census Bureau's address list with no work needing to be done. Boom, right into the list. So I've moved them from the local address list right into the census address list. It does that, automatically updates the action field over here to tell me that it's an add. Similarly, I can edit any one of these records and change the name, change the address. It automatically puts a change action code here. I can call this jumping jack flash and hit enter, and it's going to disappear because it added a C code to it. And if I sort through it, here it is. I'm ready to go. In the end, you make your changes, you make any additions to the list the Census Bureau has, and then you export this guy to a zip file, and you upload it to the Census Bureau via SWIM, as you've heard about. So that's LUCA in GUPS in a very brief nutshell.
Can I go in and sort that street name?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Just like this.
Okay.
Other questions?
And then I can go in and, in that street, I can go in and insert another address.
Yes, you can.
Add to the census list, is that right away?
Yes, add it to the census list right here.
Okay.
Who is the official keeper of addresses?
At the federal level,
anywhere in relation to NG 911 information?
That's a very good question. And when we, ultimately what we're concerned about is whether or not an address is deliverable by the post office. So there's often a gap between an E911 address list and a postal delivery address list. Oftentimes there's some overlap, but not complete. And we'll take the whole address list and try to determine which parts aren't deliverable. But it does create a problem for us trying to integrate E911 addresses that are not deliverable. We prefer to have them if the county or the jurisdiction has a city-style addressing system. Ultimately, the responsibility of deciding whether it can get delivered by the mail or not comes down to us, and then we separate those by enumeration type. Those that can be delivered a card, and we know it comes to their house because we can geocode it, those we call self-response. Those that are not end up being visited by a census person during 2020.
Okay, so the county would probably ultimately be responsible. We've got, I've heard some other horror stories, but we've got several county roads that have 3 different names. Mm-hmm. And the fire department's map says one road name, and the police have a different road name on it, and so we're trying to figure out how do you deal with that.
It's a tough one, and we try to capture all of the known addresses in using the deliverable one as the primary. That's not necessarily true. We use the posted address as the primary, but then we have a flag to use a secondary address if it's mailable. So if the street name is different, for example, and there are 3 different versions of it, we recognize the mailable version of it, but we will usually print on our maps the local recognized version of it. So it gets a little complicated, as you know. We don't always get it right, but generally we try to accommodate those.
But since you guys are ultimately aimed at getting geocode for it, we can maybe lean on that information.
Yes.
So when I add an address, and I add the street name and the house number, and then I have to add the geocode.
If you have the option of placing a dot on the map, okay, during the add process, you can say, well, I know where it is, it's right here, because I can add imagery to this. It could be my own imagery, and I know where the rooftop is. I can just click during the add process, and it will automatically add the geocode information.
Which will take care of the track.
The track block, yes.
If I don't do it that way, if I just add the geocode, will that, with the geocode, will that automatically then fill in the track and the block?
It will. It will not put a map spot on the screen, but it will tell us what track.
Because that track may be large.
Correct. We have to know what block an address is in, and when you get ready to export this thing to say that you're done, it'll run a list check on it and say, these are some issues with what you've done. So if you give us an address that doesn't have a census tract block code, it'll say, okay, this one doesn't have a block code. It's nice that we have it. We have to know where it is for tabulation. So we'll ask you to tell us which census tract and block it's in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.